Chapter 1766. I still have some questions to ask about the heaven-breaking cauldron and the one halberd. I also want to know how many taboo characters like you have not been born yet. Yi Xian said. The heartless man was not too surprised and said, You want to ask why taboo characters like us don't seize these things since they are so important, right? That's right. Yi Xian nodded. The eternal shadow had always known that he had the small cauldron, but he had never tried to seize it. Obviously this was not normal. I can tell you this. Over the years, the 12 small cauldrons have fallen into the hands of many people. Even I have obtained 3 of them, and from them, I have comprehended the most suitable taboo secret method for myself. Perhaps you have guessed that each small cauldron contains a kind of method, but this kind of method is not fixed. It depends on each person, and what they comprehend is also different. Moreover, whether it is the 12 small cauldrons or the one halberd, these things have all been obtained before. But in the end, when the chaotic universe was destroyed, these things could not open the door. Therefore, taboo characters like us do not care much about these things. What we really care about is the person who holds these treasures, because taboo characters have the same conjecture. Since these things are the treasures of the strongest person in the antiquity era, perhaps only this person can use these things. After all, since the antiquity era, many people have obtained these treasures, but there has never been anyone who can open the door with these treasures. Look at the taboo that walked out of the long river of time and space. His 8 taboo skills were actually comprehended from the 8 small cauldrons. Therefore, whether it is the 12 small cauldrons or the one halberd, for us later generations, they are just external objects for cultivation. The heartless man said a lot, and Yi Xian listened quietly, but there was a deep and heavy look in his eyes. Yi Xian suddenly understood one thing. Since he came into contact with the heaven-breaking cauldron, at that time, he was in the earth immortal realm, and only obtained the suitable method for him. As he came to the chaotic world, his cultivation rose. Every time he obtained a small cauldron, he would obtain a stronger method. In other words, as he became stronger, the opportunities within the small cauldron would also become stronger. Based on this inference, if he wanted to obtain the strongest taboo heavenly skill, he might have to break through his current realm. Of course, all of this was just Yi Xian's speculation. It was hard to say whether it was true or not. The heartless person had a complicated gaze as she looked at Yi Xian's contemplative appearance. She pondered for a long time before she finally said, Actually, it's not that I want to kill you, but your various actions prove that you're the reincarnation of the taboo among the taboo. You should know that we taboo characters are merely dead people. The chances of us breaking free from the chaos cycle of samsara are extremely slim. If those earth-shattering characters from the 3 eras were to appear in the world, we taboo characters would not be able to fight against them at all. We would only be chess pieces at their mercy. No one wants to be a chess piece. We also want to transcend, and even plan for eternity. However, everyone knows that perhaps we are in the middle of a chess game, and that the true chess players are the people who shocked heaven and earth during the 3 eras. And you've been able to live until now. In fact, many taboo characters have noticed you. They want to kill you but don't dare. If they don't kill you, they're worried. That's why they've been delaying it until now. I did want to kill you before, but I've changed my mind now. I want to form a good relationship with you. If you're really the reincarnation of those earth-shattering characters, perhaps I can avoid a great calamity in the future with this good relationship. The heartless person said sincerely. Good relationship? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. He did not understand what the heartless person was trying to say. There are 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons. One will appear every Yuan Hui. Now it's the 11th Yuan Hui, and this cauldron has appeared. This is the good relationship I want to form with you. But you must know that the heaven-shattering cauldrons that appear in the last 2 Yuan Hui are extremely important. Even the other taboo characters are determined to obtain them. This is because the things contained within them are of great use to us, the heartless person said. Yi Xian was stunned. After all, he valued the heaven-shattering cauldron greatly. He had been searching for it all this time, hoping to obtain one of the taboo heavenly techniques within. But now, It seemed that this taboo character clearly knew the whereabouts of the heaven-shattering cauldron and wanted to form a good relationship with him because of it. Didn't you say that the taboo characters don't value the heaven-shattering cauldron? Why are you now saying that the taboo characters covet it? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. The heartless person said calmly, the 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons correspond to the 12 Yuan Hui of the Chaos Verse. As more Yuan Hui are opened, the more powerful the heaven-shattering cauldrons appear. Naturally, the taboo characters will value them. In addition of the 12 cauldrons, the last 2 cauldrons are the most important. These 2 cauldrons will only appear in the final days of the Chaos Verse, and no one has ever been able to comprehend the secret technique within them. I didn't tell you this before. Every time the Chaos Verse is destroyed, no matter who obtains the 12 cauldrons, they will disappear. The next time the Chaos Verse opens, the cauldrons will reappear in every Yuan Hui. Therefore, the last 2 cauldrons will only appear in 2 Yuan Hui. Even the taboo characters are determined to obtain them, the heartless person said. Upon hearing this, Yi Xian understood and looked eagerly at the heartless person. You know where the 11th cauldron is? The primordial forbidden land, the heartless person said. The primordial forbidden land? Upon hearing these words, Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. Just the word primordial was enough to cause his nerves to tense up. This was because the primordial era, the primeval era, and the primordial era were known as the 3 most powerful eras of the eternal universe. For it to be worthy of the word primordial meant that it was no ordinary place. Perhaps because he could sense Yi Xian's shock, the heartless person slowly explained. The Chaos Verse has 3 great forbidden lands. They are known as the primordial forbidden land, the primeval forbidden land, and the primordial forbidden land. The 11th cauldron will appear in the primordial forbidden land. The primordial forbidden land is a fragment left behind after the primordial era was destroyed. It is filled with the auras of countless heaven-defying experts. Even though their bodies and souls have been destroyed, their auras remain. Not even the Chaos Verse can completely destroy them. However, if you wish to enter the primordial forbidden land, you'll need to travel an ancient astral path. This path is extremely dangerous, and even if you can safely traverse it and enter the primordial forbidden land, the dangers within the primordial forbidden land are beyond your imagination. Chapter 1767. 30 million years later, this ancient path of the stars will appear. If you're interested, you and I can travel together. However, I have to remind you that many taboo characters will appear at that time. They will also want to obtain the 11th small cauldron. You should think about it carefully, Heartless said. There's no need to think about it. I'll definitely head to the ancient forbidden land. Yi Xian made his decision without any hesitation at all. Have you really thought about it? The Heartless frowned slightly. You should know that even if you enter the ancient forbidden land safely, it's extremely likely that you'll die fighting over this opportunity with the taboo figures. Moreover, there are many dangers in the ancient forbidden land. There have been taboo figures who died there in the past. The Heartless wasn't just talking about it. She had spoken very casually, but the threats in the ancient forbidden land were definitely not limited to other taboo figures. That place was a fragment left behind from the ancient times. The dangers it contained were so great that even taboo figures had to tread on thin ice. Otherwise, they would face the risk of death. There's no need to say anything else. I'll come look for you 30 million years from now. We'll go together then, said Yi Xian indifferently. He had made his decision long ago. Whether it was for the 11th cauldron, to find out how many taboo figures had appeared, or even to see what the ancient forbidden land was like, Yi Xian would definitely head there without any hesitation. Farewell. Yi Xian didn't delay any longer. He cupped his hands and bowed to the Heartless before transforming into a beam of light and leaving the last days. The last days. The Heartless stood with her hands behind her back. Her beautiful face was calm and emotionless as she watched Yi Xian disappear into the cosmos. Perhaps I can use him to find the legendary 3 Lives flower during this trip to the ancient forbidden land, the Heartless murmured. A wisp of scarlet ruthlessness flashed through her eyes, mixed with a fiery yearning. Clearly, The Heartless hadn't been honest with Yi Xian. She had her own motives. As expected of an old man who had survived the destruction of the Chaos Verse. He was terrifyingly cunning, and all he did was use Yi Xian to achieve his own unspeakable goals. In fact, the Heartless man had told Yi Xian so many shocking secrets today because of the trip to the ancient Deadlands. The 11th heaven-shattering cauldron was indeed in the ancient Danger Lands. She did not lie to Yi Xian about this matter. Even the secrets she had told him before were true, but one of them was fake. That was the trip to the ancient Forbidden Land. Her true goal was not the heaven-shattering cauldron, but the legendary 3 lives 3 worlds flower. She was not the only one. The other taboo characters were the same. This was because the legendary 3 lives 3 worlds flower could revive the dead, truly turning them into living people instead of dead people. Moreover, this was only one of them. What kind of place was the ancient Forbidden Lands? It was formed from the fragments of the ancient Danger Lands after its destruction. The ancient Danger Lands was known as one of the 3 most powerful eras in the eternal universe. Not only did it contain the 3 lives 3 worlds flower, but it also contained many shocking opportunities left behind by the ancient Danger Lands. As long as one could obtain any one of them, it would be an unimaginably great opportunity. Of course, the Heartless man did not tell Yi Xian any of this. She only wanted to use Yi Xian to get what she wanted. Moreover, the Heartless man wanted to use someone else to do her dirty work. With so many taboo characters heading to the ancient Danger Lands, it would be best if she could borrow someone else's hand to kill Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian was an unknown factor that posed a great threat. The Heartless man was very ambitious. She wanted to obtain the 3 lives 3 worlds flower and become a real person again. She also wanted to obtain the 11th heaven-shattering cauldron, as well as the many unimaginable opportunities in the ancient Danger Lands. She only had one goal: to become one of the few people who could shock the ancient Danger Lands. Only then could she truly seek the path of transcendence. Only then would she have the qualifications and opportunity to open that door. In the vast starry sky, in the boundless universe, a huge wave of the star sea pushed Yi Xian forward. He stood on the huge wave of the star sea with his hands behind his back, and kept returning to the chaotic world. However, Yi Xian was deep in thought. His face was gloomy and uncertain, as if he was thinking about something. What kind of joke was this? Believe in the Heartless man? Yi Xian was not so naive that he would really believe the other party's words. These taboo characters were all shrewd and scheming people. If Yi Xian really believed them, he would be killed by them sooner or later. When Yi Xian came into contact with the Eternal Shadow, he had suffered a loss because of the Eternal Shadow. He would never make such a low-level mistake again. Although Yi Xian did not live as long as these taboo characters, he had walked step by step since he was a teenager. He was also a very shrewd person, and could even be called an extremely insidious old fox. After Yi Xian's continuous analysis, the Heartless man's secrets could not be false. Indeed, she did not deceive him. However, when she mentioned the ancient Danger Lands at the end, Yi Xian finally discovered her real purpose. She told Yi Xian so many secrets in the beginning, but it was all to pave the way for the ancient Danger Lands. She wanted Yi Xian to really believe her, and feel that she really wanted to form a good relationship with Yi Xian. Was Yi Xian stupid? No. Since the ancient Danger Lands were formed by the fragments after the destruction of the ancient times, how could there only be the 11th heaven-shattering cauldron? Moreover, after experiencing so many chaotic universes, these taboo characters had also obtained this small cauldron. It did not make sense for them to gather in the ancient Danger Lands and fight each other for a small cauldron. Clearly, besides the 11th cauldron, there were other opportunities in the ancient Danger Lands that he did not know about. And these opportunities were the true purpose of these taboo characters. Moreover, based on Yi Xian's temperament, since the ancient Danger Lands were formed by the fragments of the ancient times, there were bound to be many unimaginable opportunities within. After all, the ancient Danger Lands were known as one of the 3 most powerful eras in the eternal universe. The things left behind were likely to be extremely astonishing. If I can obtain great rewards in the ancient Danger Lands, I might be able to merge the 12 gates of heaven into one, and even break through my current realm. Yi Xian's eyes were terrifyingly deep as he excitedly muttered to himself. One had to know that his current cultivation was extremely strong, far surpassing that of the sovereigns. If he wanted to merge the 12 gates of heaven into one, he would need an unimaginable amount of cultivation resources. Let's put it this way. Even if he devoured the cultivation bases of the 11 sovereigns of history, he still wouldn't be able to merge the 12 gates of heaven into one. This was because his body was like a bottomless pit. The amount of cultivation resources he needed was unimaginable. Moreover, according to the heartless man, Yi Xian was walking the same path as the heaven-defying experts of the 3 eras. And this was the most correct path. Chapter 1768. However, Yi Xian was also faced with a serious problem. The 12 heavenly gates that he cultivated were the paths of the 3 strongest eras of all time. If Yi Xian was in one of the 3 strongest eras, cultivation resources would naturally not be a problem. However, since the 3 great eras, the 3,000 great ways were no longer there. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was thin, and even the laws were weak. This was the suppression of the chaotic universe. The strongest cultivator was only the strongest of all time, and no one could surpass this limit. Therefore, Yi Xian was in a very awkward situation. He was on the right path. However, the suppression of the chaotic universe now made his cultivation extremely slow. And even if he wanted to seize a huge amount of cultivation resources to promote his cultivation, it had become extremely difficult. But now an opportunity had appeared. The ancient perilous land. Yi Xian had a very strong premonition that if he could seize this opportunity, his cultivation would definitely have a breakthrough. Otherwise, in the chaotic universe, even if he waited until the 12th Yuan Hui, when the chaotic universe was destroyed, he was afraid that he would not be able to combine the 12 heavenly gates, let alone break through his current realm. Interesting. You want to use me? Let's see who will win. Yi Xian sneered. The waves of the star sea pushed him and disappeared in the starry sky, heading straight back to the chaotic world. There were still 30 million years before the ancient starry sky path opened. Yi Xian had to make sufficient preparations in these 30 million years. After all, in the ancient perilous land, he not only had to face many taboos, but also had to guard against the many dangers contained in the ancient perilous land. Although this trip was extremely dangerous, riches and honor were found in danger. This time, the risk had to be taken. Yi Xian naturally had to be well prepared. The extreme devil temple. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void and slowly breathed. It had been 10,000 years since Yi Xian disappeared to search for the taboo figure. After the battle 10,000 years ago, Yi Xian's name once again resounded in the chaotic world, and the entire structure of the chaotic world had undergone a great change. Just the fact that Yi Xian had taken down the utmost powerful beings was enough to send the living beings of the 5 regions of chaos into an uproar. When the infinite spirits found out that Yi Xian and the others were the disciples of Yi Xian received even more attention. At the same time, the old subordinates of the sky-burying palace reappeared and came to the extreme devil temple. Even the retired Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen reappeared. Wang, the void rippled, and a figure quietly appeared in the supreme demonic heavenly palace. Yi Xuanma opened his eyes in shock, but when he saw who it was, he was overjoyed. Welcome back, Master. Yi Xuanma hurriedly kowtowed. Clang, clang, clang. A total of 81 bell tolls reverberated throughout the extreme demonic shrine, and a piece of news spread from the extreme demonic shrine to the outside world. Emperor Zongtian, Yi Xian had returned. All of a sudden, many people related to Yi Xian rushed to the extreme devil temple, and the whole chaotic world was in turmoil again. Extreme demonic heavenly palace. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the main seat, and the 3 disciples bowed to him. The extreme love master and Yi Xian sat side by side. The entire extreme demonic heavenly palace was packed with thousands of people. These people were the old subordinates of the sky-burying palace. When they heard the news of Yi Xian's return, they came to the extreme demonic shrine. At this moment, Everyone looked at Yi Xian with reverence and excitement. Master! Suddenly, two figures barged into the heavenly palace, accompanied by excited voices. They were Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen, and there were two people Yi Xian was familiar with following them. These two people were Luo Ho and Yuan Ling. Seeing old friends, Yi Xian smiled and stood up to greet them. This made the three disciples, and the old subordinates of the sky-burying palace, change their expressions. From this, it could be seen that Yi Xian was very kind to Fatso Huang and the others, and they could not compare to him. Disciple greets master. Yi Xian strode to Yuan Ling and bowed to Yuan Ling. This bow shocked Yuan Ling and made him feel awkward. Yuan Ling did not expect that with Yi Xian's cultivation and status, he would still bow to him. In fact, Yuan Ling did not know that in Yi Xian's heart, without Yuan Ling, he would not be where he was today. Yi Xian was not an ungrateful person. As his guide, Yuan Ling's bow to Yi Xian was full of sincerity and was not fake. Grand Disciple Yi Xian Mo greets Grand Master. Yi Xian Mo was very smart. He quickly lowered his body and bowed to Yuan Ling. This also caused Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling to come to their senses, and they also bowed to Yuan Ling. After all, even Yi Xian was bowing to someone as disciples. They could not be rude. Qingmei greets Master. The Master of Extreme Love, Yi Qingmei, was Yi Xian's wife in name. Naturally, she would not be rude and bowed to Yuan Ling as well. Yuan Ling was slightly at a loss for what to do, and her face was extremely flushed while her body trembled violently, and she hurriedly said, "All supreme experts, please don't make me feel unworthy. How can I accept such great courtesy?" Although Yuan Ling was very humble, his eyes were also filled with excitement. How could he not know that these powerhouses bowed to him and called themselves grand disciples because of Yi Xian? Yuan Ling was proud in his heart. Although his aptitude and cultivation were not good, he had cultivated an unparalleled figure. This was his greatest pride. Master, you can accept their bow. Even though they are powerhouses, they are still your juniors. Yi Xian smiled. Good. I have indeed taken in a good disciple. At this moment, Yuan Ling was in tears. The pride in his heart had reached an extreme. Wasn't this the day he had been waiting for? The world had never heard of his name, Yuan Ling. But his disciple was an unparalleled figure. This alone was enough to make him proud. At this moment, Luo Ho's eyes were filled with envy. If he had taken in Yi Xian as his disciple back then, perhaps he would also be treated like this today. Luo Ho, my friend, long time no see. You have also become a half-step powerhouse. Yi Xian nodded and smiled at Luo Ho. Luo Ho smiled bitterly. What is a half-step powerhouse? How can I be compared to you? Luo Ho said sadly. Back then the two of them were enemies. But after countless years, Yi Xian had already left him far behind. This made him sigh. One had to admit that after a Yuan Hui, more than 700 million years had passed. Be it Yuan Ling, Luo Ho, or even Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen, they had all become half-step powerhouses. After all, there were only the four of them left. To be able to see them again was an extremely gratifying thing for Yi Xian. Old friends gathered together, laughing and chatting. Everyone had endless things to talk about. The entire extreme demonic heavenly palace was extremely lively. Yi Xian had even set up a huge banquet, and there was no need to mention the drinking and toasting. Master, suddenly, a figure barged into the extreme demonic heavenly palace. It was also the appearance of this person that caused the entire extreme demonic heavenly palace to quieten down. Jun Wushuang. Yi Xian put down his wine cup, and his lips curled into a smile. No wonder he kept feeling that something was missing. So it was because he was missing his two servants, Jun Wushuang and Li Taichu. Chapter 1769. Wushuang greets Master. 700 million years had passed and Jun Wushuang had long become a half-step supreme expert. However, her expression was colder and more unapproachable than before. Good. It's good that you're back. Yi Xian still thought highly of Jun Wushuang. After all, back then, Jun Wushuang had walked out his own path, and she and Li Taichu had fought for him for many years. It could be said that they had made great contributions. Senior Sister Wuxuang, please take a seat. Yi Xian quickly invited her. Master, Wuxuang has some private matters to discuss with you, Jun Wuxuang said in a low voice. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. However, when he saw Jun Wuxuang's cold expression, he nodded and got up to greet Jun Wuxuang out of the Extreme Demon Heavenly Palace. Such a scene immediately surprised everyone present. Obviously, they knew something was wrong. Outside, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm. Jun Wuxuang bowed beside him and said something angrily. Actually, I've known about this for a long time. When Jun Wuxuang finished speaking, Yi Xian finally turned to look at Jun Wuxuang. There was no emotion in his eyes. You know about it? Jun Wuxuang was obviously stunned. Yes. Although he hid it well and did not dare to reveal any aura, he could not fool my eyes. Yi Xian said lightly. That's right, with your cultivation. Even if he tried to hide it, how could he escape your eyes? Jun Wuxuang sighed. But there's one thing I don't understand. How did he get the heavenly heart of chaos from the immortal heaven lord? Why didn't he acknowledge me? Instead, he wanted to kill me. Yi Xian frowned. Master, when the burial heaven palace fell apart, he was the first to leave. I felt that he was strange and had been following him. Finally, I discovered his secret. I have been friends with him for so many years. I didn't expect that he would want to kill me. If I hadn't been hiding for so many years, I'm afraid I would have died in his hands. Jun Wuxuang said hatefully. For him to be able to become a paragon, this is also his fortune. After all, back then, the two of you had both created your own Tao and laws. You were also the ones with the highest hopes of becoming a paragon. However, I didn't expect that he would take over the undying Heaven Lord's position. Yi Xian calmly said, Master, this man has the ambition of a wolf. He dares to have disloyal thoughts towards you. He should be killed quickly. Jun Wuxuang said hatefully. I think he's waiting for me as well. Yi Xian's voice was calm and tranquil from afar. The banquet lasted for a full 7 days and 7 nights. Yi Xian chatted with his old friends about everything under the sun. It was a rare opportunity for him to relax. 7 days later, Yi Xian told everyone that he still had a lot of things to do, and that he might not see them for a long time. Of course, Yi Xian didn't say what he was going to do. After all, if he told everyone what he was going to do next, it would only make them worry. In the end, before Yi Xian left, he only told everyone a few things to do, and asked them to cultivate in peace. As for whether the burial heaven palace would be rebuilt, it was up to them to decide. The 8th day, Yi Xian brought Jun Wuxuang and disappeared from everyone's sight. No one knew what Jun Wuxuang and Yi Xian talked about or where they went. However, everyone knew that when they saw Yi Xian again, it would be unknown how many years it would be. The undying heaven palace. The masked man sat cross-legged in the void. The power of nirvanic extermination surrounded him. However, his entire being was lifeless, and his surroundings were terrifyingly quiet. This day has finally come. The masked man whispered in a hoarse voice. His eyes looked through the mask into the distance. It was as if he could see the man who kept him awake day and night coming here. Heavenly Master, let's run. An old man trembled as he spoke. His eyes were filled with indescribable fear. He had followed the masked man for more than 700 million years, and was also the masked man's trusted aide. He also knew the masked man's true identity. Run. The masked man smiled bitterly and said, Where can we run to? With his cultivation, even if we run to the ends of the earth, we will still be found by him. But if we don't run, you will definitely die. The old man trembled. When I knew he was still alive, I had a premonition that this day would come. This is good too. Finally, I don't have to live in fear all day. The masked man mocked himself. Li Taichu, get out here. Boom! A terrifying roar came, and the gates of the heavenly palace exploded. Jun Wuxuang instantly appeared in the immortal heaven palace. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at the masked man. Wuxuang, your temper is still so fiery. The masked man said calmly. Li Taichu, you didn't kill me back then. Today is the day you die. Jun Wuxuang shouted coldly. Wuxuang, you and I have known each other for many years. If I really wanted to kill you back then, you wouldn't have been able to escape. Today, My tribulation has arrived, and I don't want to explain anything to you. The masked man said coldly. As the two were talking, Yi Xian slowly walked into the Immortal Heaven Palace. This made the masked man tremble, and the old man beside him was so frightened that he fell to his knees. Absolute beginning. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the masked man calmly. The masked man trembled and stood up. He slowly took off the mask on his face, and a face that Yi Xian was familiar with appeared. Li Taichu. The masked man's true identity was Li Taichu, a servant who had followed Yi Xian. Absolute beginning greets master. Li Taichu bowed to Yi Xian. His face was filled with bitterness. The arrogance he once had was gone. At this moment, there was only a sense of vicissitudes around him. Actually, I have always valued you in Wushuang, but I didn't expect that when I returned, you would want to kill me. Yi Xian said calmly. Valued? Li Taichu laughed. But his laugh was very sad, and there was an unspeakable anger in it. His expression gradually turned ferocious. Master, I Li Taichu have never thought of betraying you. But what have you done? When have you ever valued me? And when have you ever valued Jun Wushuang? At this moment, Li Taichu roared with indignation and hysteria. His voice caused the entire palace to tremble in fear. Li Taichu, you are about to die and you still don't know how to apologize? Jun Wushuang scolded angrily. Li Taichu turned to Jun Wushuang and said angrily, why should I apologize? I have never done anything wrong. I am only living for myself. You? Jun Wushuang glared at him. Without waiting for Jun Wushuang to scold him, Yi Xian waved his hand to stop him. He looked calmly at Li Taichu and said, it seems that you have a lot of resentment in your heart. If you give me a satisfactory explanation, I can spare your life today. You want an explanation? Fine. I will give you an explanation today. Li Taichu had completely thrown caution to the wind. At this point, the worst outcome for him was death. There was nothing he couldn't say. Chapter 1770. Back then in the 100 Seedlings battlefield, you used your supreme cultivation to subdue me and Jun Wushuang. The two of us were willing to acknowledge you as our master. That goes without saying. After that, Jun Wushuang and I fought for you for many years. Even if we didn't make any contributions, we still worked hard, right? Li Taichu said with grief and indignation. That's right. Yi Xian nodded in agreement, because what Li Taichu said was the truth. But how did you treat the two of us? Li Taichu roared angrily. Jun Wushuang and I both walked our own path, and have the potential to become the strongest in history. But you only cared about your disciple, Yi Fengtian. You even personally brought him to cultivate, and nurtured him into the strongest in the 11th Yuan Hui. Have you ever thought about me and Jun Wushuang? Fine. Even if Yi Fengtian is your disciple and you are biased towards him, I Li Taichu won't say anything. But what about Wan Hongling? She's just a small cultivator. Just because she's Yi Fengtian's wife, you taught her the boundless secular world technique, and even gave her the chance to take over the position of human Tao. What contribution did she make to deserve this supreme opportunity? I don't accept this. Li Taichu roared hysterically and suddenly pointed at Jun Wushuang. Jun Wushuang, let me ask you, do you accept this? Jun Wushuang's face was pale. She wanted to refute Li Taichu, but when the words came to her mouth, she didn't know how to refute. Because in her heart, she was indeed not convinced. It was just that she didn't express it as clearly as Li Taichu. Master, do you see it? Li Taichu laughed bitterly. At this moment, Yi Xian was silent. He just looked at Li Taichu quietly. No one knew what he was thinking. Master, Jun Wushuang and I have fought for you for many years. Moreover, the two of us both have the potential to become the strongest, and have even walked our own path. These two positions should be ours. Why can Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling become the strongest while Jun Wushuang and I should be reduced to mediocrity? Li Taichu said angrily. Li Taichu, don't quibble anymore. I admit that I am indeed a little dissatisfied, but Master has his own reasons. This is not a reason for your betrayal, Jun Wushuang said coldly. You may have accepted your fate, but I, Li Taichu, will not accept my fate. Li Taichu roared. Master, Do you still remember how Wuxia and I helped you kill the Undying Heaven Lord? Li Taichu calmed down again and looked bitterly at Yi Xian. Continue, Yi Xian said calmly, because he knew that Li Taichu would soon reveal why he took over the Undying Heaven Lord's position. Back then, 7 great experts surrounded and killed the Undying Heaven Palace. Master once ordered me and Wuxia to exterminate the Undying Heaven Palace. It was this extermination that allowed me to obtain the Undying Immortal Scripture and the Heavenly Heart of Chaos, left behind by the Undying Heaven Lord. Back then, you were very curious as to why the Undying Heaven Lord's primal chaos heavenly core didn't appear after his death. Actually, the Undying Heaven Lord had long left the primal chaos heavenly core in the Undying Heaven Palace. In the end, it was obtained by me. Li Taichu paused for a moment, and then continued in a low voice. I originally wanted to tell you about the Heavenly Heart of Chaos and the Undying Immortal Scripture, but I hid it from you because I knew that this was my chance, a chance to become the strongest. Actually, I have never betrayed you. If you had given me and Jun Wuxia a chance to become the strongest back then, why would I have to come to this step today? Li Taichu smiled bitterly. You are saying that I am unfair, Yi Xian said in a low voice. Am I not? Li Taichu said with a trembling voice. Yi Xian nodded slowly and said, You are right. You and Wuxia have fought for me for many years. In terms of contributions, you are more than anyone else. Moreover, you and Wuxia have both walked on your own path. Your 6 annihilations and Wuxia's extreme violet heavenly energy can also be transformed into the strongest power. I am indeed unfair in this matter. Yi Xian admitted that he was indeed unfair in this matter. After all, he was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. How could he care about these trivial matters? However, if everyone is like you, how many people would want to betray and kill me? If I am unfair, the first person to betray me should be Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen, because the 2 of them have been by my side since they were young and have contributed a lot to me. If I am unfair, the 2 of them are the ones I owe the most. The 2 strongest positions should be given to them, and not to you and Jun Wuxia. This is also not a reason for you to betray me, Yi Xian said coldly. Li Taichu was speechless. He was stunned on the spot. Yes, in terms of contributions, even Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen did not obtain the strongest positions. How could he and Jun Wuxia compare to the 2 of them? But Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen have never thought of betraying me. They have always been by my side loyally, and will not complain because of my unfairness. Yi Xian paused for a moment and looked at Li Taichu with deep eyes. And don't forget that I spared your life in the 100 Seedlings battlefield. Your life has long belonged to me, Yi Xian. You have no right to ask for anything from me, because you are my servant and I am the master. Even if I am unfair, if I ask you to die, you must die. This is the way of a master and servant. Boom! As Yi Xian's words entered his ears, Li Taichu kept retreating. His face was pale and bloodless. Just the words way of a master and servant made him speechless. Master and servant. Yes, you are the master and I am the servant. Ha ha ha, I am too stupid. How could I overstep the boundaries of a master and servant? Suddenly Li Taichu laughed miserably. He was extremely dispirited. How could he forget that no matter how great his contributions were, his identity was only Yi Xian's servant? Just kill me. Li Taichu smiled miserably. Just the way of a master and servant was enough to make him unable to argue. This was because he knew Yi Xian's temperament. He hid the heavenly heart of chaos behind Yi Xian's back, and stood on the opposite side of Yi Xian when he returned. He even almost joined forces with fate to deal with Yi Xian. This was a crime that deserved death. I will send you on your way. Rumble. Yi Xian mercilessly spoke. He raised his 5 fingers and struck towards Li Taichu. Li Taichu didn't resist, and a relieved expression blossomed on his face. This was because he knew that even if he resisted, it would be useless. The result would be death. Boom! This attack directly blasted Li Taichu's physical body apart, and the surrounding power of nirvanic extermination collapsed. His entire body crashed to the ground with a loud bang, and then there was no sign of life. Buzz! Yi Xian looked at Li Taichu indifferently. He did not stay any longer. He took a step forward, and disappeared from the supreme demonic heavenly palace. Taichu. Jun Wuxuang clenched her fists and her eyes were filled with sorrow. Although she hated Li Taichu for killing her back then, they had been friends for a long time. But the two of them had known each other for many years after all. And to really see Li Taichu die so tragically right before her eyes, it made Jun Wuxuang feel an indescribable pain. Chapter 1771. Cough. 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 Suddenly Li Taichu's mangled body trembled. He had survived Yi Xian's attack, but he was still coughing up blood. You're not dead? Jun Wuxuang was stunned. She came to Li Taichu's side and quickly helped him up. She saw Li Taichu slowly opening his eyes. I was wrong. Wuxuang. I was really wrong. Master. Please spare my life. I was really wrong. Puff. Li Taichu's mouth was overflowing with blood. His breath was extremely weak, but he was only seriously injured and did not really die. Master he? Jun Wuxuang was stunned on the spot, and then she understood. Yi Xian's attack just now. If he wanted Li Taichu's life, Li Taichu would not have survived. Obviously, Yi Xian did not want to kill Li Taichu, and gave him one last chance. Wuxuang. I have let Master down. Please tell Master. Taichu. I will repay him. Li Taichu finally fainted. Although Yi Xian did not take his life, his injuries were too serious. If you knew this would happen, why were you so foolish back then? Jun Wuxuang sighed helplessly, but her heart was warm. As the saying goes, if Yi Xian really killed Li Taichu, Jun Wuxuang's heart would be a little estranged. After all, Li Taichu's situation was very similar to hers. In the vast starry sky, the boundless universe, Yi Xian was teleporting away. His expression was calm, and a touch of helplessness flashed across his eyes. He did not kill Li Taichu, perhaps because he felt a little guilty. After all, the two of them had fought for him for so many years. Even if they did not contribute, they had worked hard. If he really killed Li Taichu, it would make many people disappointed. Although Li Taichu seemed to have betrayed him, in fact, he did not do anything harmful to Yi Xian. This was also the reason why Yi Xian spared his life. Moreover, Li Taichu becoming the Undying Heaven Lord also made Yi Xian certain that the Undying Heaven Lord was dead. Yi Xian made up his mind. He turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the starry sky. His destination was the Destiny Temple. There were still 30 million years before the ancient starry sky road opened. This period of time seemed long, but it actually passed in the blink of an eye. Before heading to the ancient Forbidden Land, Yi Xian naturally had to settle the grudges of the past. The fact that the Master of Fate was still alive was a thorn in Yi Xian's heart. He had to get rid of this person. Of course, killing the Master of Fate was nothing to the current Yi Xian. His true goal was the cauldron, one of the three paragons. Yi Xian was determined to obtain these three small cauldrons. Before the ancient starry sky path opened, Yi Xian naturally wanted to obtain these three small cauldrons. The Fane of Destiny. The starry sky was vast and shrouded in mist. The Fortune Shrine was protected by the sky-shrouding formation. It was impossible to sense its existence from the outside. There weren't many people in the Fane of Destiny, only a few thousand. However, every one of them had an extremely high cultivation base. Otherwise, how could it be called a paragon orthodoxy? However, during this period of time, the people of the Fane of Destiny trembled in fear. They were restless every day. Even though the Master of Fate had sealed the shrine, they were still terrified. The Master of Fate sat cross-legged in the void, adjusting his breathing. He had been utterly defeated in his battle with Yi Xian. Even after summoning the River of Fate, he was no match for Yi Xian. He had even suffered a terrifying backlash. If it weren't for a taboo character walking out of the River of Fate, he would have lost his life in Yi Xian's hands. After escaping back to the Destiny Temple, the Master of Fate immediately sealed the orthodoxy and teleported away with the entire Destiny Temple. He was afraid that Yi Xian would come looking for him. However, the Master of Fate was still uneasy. Yi Xian's methods were simply too powerful. He wasn't sure if he could escape Yi Xian's pursuit. Damn it! If I had known this would happen, I would have crushed his bones and scattered his ashes long ago. Otherwise, how could I have endured such humiliation? The scene of being trampled on by Yi Xian flashed through the mind of the Master of Destiny. His entire body was filled with shame and indignation, causing the disciples of the elders beside him to keep quiet out of fear. Boom! Suddenly, an explosion sounded in the starry sky. The deployment spell covering the fortune shrine exploded, and a silhouette appeared in the starry sky, walking into the fortune shrine. Fate, I want to kill you. Even if you flee to the ends of the earth, your fate will still be death. Dong! 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 Yi Xian slowly walked. However, with every step he took, the buildings of the Temple of Destiny exploded into pieces and gradually turned into wreckage. Yi Xian, I've already admitted defeat. Don't go too far. The Master of Fate roared. If one looked closely, they would see that his eyes were filled with fear and hesitation. It was as if he was looking for a way to escape. Boom! Yi Xian stepped forward and entered the Destiny Temple. He directly appeared in front of everyone, causing the elders and disciples to retreat in fear. Do you want me to kill you personally? Or do you want to end it yourself? Yi Xian was dressed in black. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back. There was no aura around him as he looked indifferently at the Master of Fate. Yi Daoyu, I was wrong in the past. However, I've already admitted defeat. Why do you have to be so aggressive? How about this? As long as you're willing to back off and resolve this grudge, I can agree to any conditions. The Master of Destiny lowered his posture to the extreme, making him appear even more humble. Although he was inwardly ashamed and resentful, he was truly afraid of Yi Xian's powerful attack. Hand over the heaven-shattering cauldron. Yi Xian said indifferently. He directly asked the Master of Fate for the heaven-shattering cauldron. This caused the Master of Fate's expression to change greatly. He looked extremely troubled. What? You don't want to hand it over? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed in his eyes, causing the Master of Fate to tremble. Humiliation, unwillingness, helplessness, all kinds of feelings of shame and indignation surged in his heart. He was being forced by Yi Xian like this. This kind of humiliation made him unable to face the elders and disciples behind him. However, people under the eaves had no choice but to lower their heads. He had already suffered so much humiliation before. Now that he was being forced by Yi Xian to hand over the heaven-shattering cauldron, it was actually nothing. Heavenly Master, please hand over the heaven-shattering cauldron. Otherwise he will kill us. A disciple was terrified of the death that Yi Xian could bring. He trembled as he begged the Master of Fate. That's right, Heavenly Master. Give the heaven-shattering cauldron to him. Several elders also advised with pale faces. I'll give it to him. The Master of Fate gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling, he still flipped his hand, and a small cauldron appeared. He then reluctantly tossed it to Yi Xian. Buzz! Yi Xian stretched out his hand to catch the small cauldron. A smile finally appeared on his face. However, in the next moment, he frowned because the small cauldron in his hand was filled with the aura of fate. It even had the Master of Fate's imprint on it. Cut off your connection with the small cauldron, Yi Xian said coldly. Okay. The Master of Fate's expression turned ugly. However, he still formed a seal with both hands and directly cut off his connection with the small cauldron. However, his face also paled, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Clearly, cutting off his connection with the small cauldron had damaged his mental state. However, under Yi Xian's coercion, he did not dare to show any dissatisfaction. You've done well. Yi Xian nodded approvingly. He fiddled with the small cauldron in his hand with a fiery gaze. However, a cruel smile appeared on his face. Chapter 1772. I have already given you the heaven-shattering cauldron. The grudge between us is settled. Yi Dao, you can leave now, said the Master of Destiny. Leave. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze from the small cauldron. A strange and sinister smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he looked at the Master of Destiny with a mocking expression. What do you want to do? Seeing the sinister expression on Yi Xian's face, the Master of Destiny's expression changed. He had an extremely bad feeling. What do I want to do? Yi Xian smiled. However, his smile was extremely sinister. He said, naturally, I want to kill you and destroy your so-called destiny shrine. You broke your promise. The Master of Destiny retreated continuously. He glared at Yi Xian with a furious expression. Ha ha ha. Yi Xian smiled faintly and said, I never said that I would let you go if you gave me the heaven-shattering cauldron. That is what you think. Run. Boom. The power of destiny whistled out. The Master of Destiny did not hesitate at all. He turned into a streak of light and tried to escape. He knew very well that if he did not escape now, he would not have the chance to do so. Do you think you can escape? Rumble. Yi Xian's 5 fingers suddenly stretched out. It was as if he wanted to crush the heavens. The terrifying halo of the burial of the heavens suppressed the entire starry sky. The Master of Destiny could not escape at all. Go to hell. Yi Xian shouted viciously. The 12 heavenly gates suddenly appeared. The eternal reincarnation fist bloomed. The fist light that could suppress eternity was swung out by Yi Xian. It was impossible for him to let the Master of Destiny go. Yi Xian, you will die a horrible death. Boom. A punch pierced through the heavens. The ultimate destruction. This punch was terrifying to the extreme. It directly blew up the Master of Destiny in the starry sky. Not even a complete corpse was left. His divine soul was crushed into ashes by Yi Xian's reincarnation halo. Originally, it would have been better if the Master of Destiny did not escape. If he self-destructed, he might have been able to fight for a way out. However, he was too afraid to fight Yi Xian. This made it so that he did not even have the chance to fight. He was killed by Yi Xian in one blow. You are really pitifully weak. Yi Xian indifferently said. He opened his mouth wide, and terrifying black mist rose from his entire body. The Calamity Immortal technique and the heaven-devouring demonic art were activated, directly transforming the blood mist that filled the sky into the most majestic energy and swallowing it into his stomach. Although devouring the cultivation of the Master of Destiny was nothing more than a cup of water to the current Yi Xian. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. It could slightly increase Yi Xian's cultivation, so he naturally wouldn't let it go. Buzz! Suddenly a halo of light appeared. It exuded the mysterious aura of chaos. It was the heavenly heart of chaos left behind by the Master of Destiny after his death. Chi! In a flash, the heavenly heart of chaos turned into a beam of light and disappeared in front of Yi Xian. Obviously, the heavenly heart of chaos had to find a new Master of Destiny after the Master of Destiny died. You want to leave? Yi Xian muttered in a sinister voice. His 5 fingers abruptly stretched out, sealing off the entire universe for hundreds of millions of kilometers. That incomparably powerful energy spread out as he grabbed towards the primal chaos heavenly core. If it was in the past, Yi Xian would not have been able to grab the heavenly heart of chaos. However, with Yi Xian's current cultivation, the heavenly heart of chaos could not escape from his palm. Boom! Stellar transposition telekinesis. When Yi Xian retracted his 5 fingers, the heavenly heart of chaos was already in his hand. The mysterious halo was a little dazzling. Yi Xian stared at it intently. In fact, Yi Xian had always been curious about the heavenly heart of chaos. Only by fusing with the heavenly heart of chaos could one become the strongest in history. Yi Xian was also thinking about the profoundness of the heavenly heart of chaos. Spare my life. Emperor Lord Zongtian, spare my life. Just when Yi Xian wanted to take a closer look at the heavenly heart of chaos in his hand, the disciples and elders of the Destiny Shrine knelt on the ground in fear. They begged Yi Xian for mercy. This made Yi Xian frown. A bunch of ants. Living is a waste of air. Boom. Yi Xian slapped out with his palm, and an enormous palm that blotted out the sky appeared. It directly shattered the entire Destiny Shrine into ashes, and thousands of elders and disciples of the Destiny Shrine were completely annihilated. Go. After killing the Master of Destiny and destroying his strongest orthodoxy, Yi Xian didn't stay any longer. He took a step forward and disappeared from this part of the universe. The waves of the starry sea were like lightning. Yi Xian was hurrying. He had reaped a great harvest this time. Not only did he snatch the Master of Destiny's small cauldron, but he also obtained the heavenly heart of chaos. This was a great harvest. Yi Xian had also observed the heavenly heart of chaos and the small cauldron. He discovered that the so-called heavenly heart of chaos was a law unique to the chaos verse. Simply put, the heavenly heart of chaos was a kind of mark. It was a mark recognized by the chaos verse. Anyone who had this mark could borrow the power of the chaos verse. This was the so-called strongest in history. Originally, Yi Xian wanted to devour the heavenly heart of chaos to see if it could increase his cultivation. However, Yi Xian discovered that the heavenly heart of chaos didn't contain any power. It was just a law. It was useless even if he devoured it. Yi Xian couldn't fuse with the heavenly heart of chaos and become the so-called master of destiny. He put the heavenly heart of chaos away. If he could find a suitable candidate in the future, he could create another strongest. Of course, Yi Xian was most interested in the small cauldron. He had tried to comprehend the mysteries of the small cauldron, but he was left speechless. The small cauldron was filled with the aura of destiny. It didn't contain any forbidden secret arts. However, Yi Xian wasn't disappointed. After all, he had only tried to comprehend it a little. Once he was done with the following matters, he would naturally find a quiet place to comprehend the secrets of the small cauldron. Yi Xian increased his speed once again. He was heading towards the #1 orthodoxy of all time, the Chaos Shrine. His target was naturally the small cauldron in the hands of the Master of Chaos. Yi Xian's plan was simple. He wanted all the small cauldrons in the hands of the three strongest. Now that he had killed Destiny and obtained a small cauldron, his second target was naturally the Master of Chaos. Chaos Shrine. Chaos light covered the sky and earth. There were even mysterious sounds faintly coming from the starry sky. It gave people a feeling of majesty and heaviness. However, the entire Chaos Shrine was heavily guarded. There were a large number of divine guards patrolling the area. Everyone was cautious and gave people an extremely stifling feeling. Rumble. A huge wave from the starry sea came crashing down on the Chaos God Palace, causing the Chaos God Palace to tremble even more. Ask the Master of Chaos to come out and see me. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yi Xian stood on the waves and spoke calmly. Although there was no terrifying aura around him, the divine guards retreated in fear. "You've finally come." Before the divine guards could report, the deep voice of the Master of Chaos sounded. The doors of the Chaos Shrine opened, and the Master of Chaos strode towards Yi Xian with a group of elders. "Yi Dao, you please." In an instant, the Master of Chaos appeared before Yi Xian. He cupped his hands and bowed to Yi Xian. However, there was an extremely solemn look in his eyes. Chapter 1773. In fact, when Yi Xian killed the Master of Fate, the Master of Chaos had sensed it immediately. After all, the three of them were of the same origin. The Master of Chaos knew that Yi Xian would definitely come looking for him after killing Fate. This made his heart heavy. To fight or not to fight? A choice was placed in front of him. In terms of cultivation and secret techniques, the Master of Chaos believed that he was much stronger than Fate. He still had the River of Chaos as his final trump card. However, the Master of Chaos knew very well that even if he used the River of Chaos to elevate himself to the extreme, he would only end up dead if he fought with Yi Xian. After all, the Master of Fate was an example. Yi Xian's cultivation had long surpassed that of an ultimate. Even if he was known as the #1 ultimate in the chaotic universe, he was nothing in front of Yi Xian. In the end, the Master of Chaos chose to compromise. He only wanted to send this demon away, no matter the price. After all, he only had one life. He did not want to die in Yi Xian's hands. On Yi Xian's way, the Master of Chaos had already prepared everything in hopes of avoiding this massacre. "You knew I would come?" Looking at the Master of Chaos's calm expression, Yi Xian said indifferently, "What will come, and what should be avoided can't be avoided." The Master of Primal Chaos smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Taoist, your cultivation is unparalleled in this world. I admit that I am no match for you. However, I hope that we can bury the hatchet. I am even willing to submit to you." The Master of Chaos was extremely humble. He did not have the dignity of the number one ultimate in the chaotic universe. Instead, he was begging Yixian softly. Seeing the Master of Chaos's attitude, Yixian was slightly surprised. He thought that the Master of Chaos would resist. He did not expect him to be so humble. I want the heaven-shattering cauldron. Yixian did not beat around the bush. He directly stated his purpose. All right. Without any hesitation, the Master of Chaos took out the small cauldron and tossed it to Yixian. Furthermore, he had already severed his connection with the small cauldron. Yixian took the small cauldron and looked at the Master of Chaos in surprise. The Master of Chaos smiled bitterly. Clearly, he had already expected that Yixian would want the small cauldron. Yi Daoyu, this cosmos sack contains 90% of the Chaos Divine Temple's resources. Whether it's secret arts, divine weapons, or chaos spiritual items, I'll give them all to you. The Master of Primal Chaos flipped his hand, and a cosmos sack appeared before he respectfully handed it to Yixian. Yixian did not stand on ceremony as he took the cosmos sack. He did not expect the Master of Chaos to be so tactful as to give him almost all of the treasures in the Chaos Temple. Yixian checked the cosmos sack in his hand and found that it was filled with extremely rare treasures. Just the Chaos sacred items alone numbered more than 20. Even Yixian was a little surprised by the Master of Chaos's wealth. Fellow Taoist Yi, I've already done everything I can. In the future, no matter what orders you have, as long as you issue a decree, my Primal Chaos Divine Hall will definitely follow your orders. We definitely won't dare to have any other thoughts. After the Master of Chaos finished speaking, he bowed to Yixian. Clearly he was submitting to Yixian. As the saying went, one does not hit a smiling face. Moreover, the Master of Chaos had already submitted, and even personally handed over the heaven-shattering cauldron and many other treasures. This made Yixian nod slowly. After all, the Master of Chaos did not have much of a grudge with him. There was no reason to kill him. Moreover, the Master of Chaos was so sensible that Yixian was extremely satisfied. I admire smart people, and you happen to be a smart person. Not bad, not bad. Yixian spoke calmly. Then he took a step forward. The sea of stars beneath his feet surged and pushed Yixian away from the Chaos Temple. However, just as Yixian was about to leave, his voice rang out in this part of the starry sky. Chaos, remember what you said. If you dare to go back on your promise today, you should know what will happen to you. I will definitely keep my promise. I won't dare to have any disloyalty. The Master of Chaos hurriedly replied. He was also making a promise to Yixian. Finally, Yixian completely disappeared from this part of the starry sky. With Yixian's departure, the Master of Chaos heaved a sigh of relief. A huge rock had finally been lifted from his heart. He had been cautious just now because he was afraid that Yixian would be ruthless. Fortunately, he had abandoned his dignity as the strongest throughout history and was extremely obedient to Yixian. In the end, he had managed to protect his life and the orthodoxy behind him. Heavenly Master, we've wronged you. The elders behind him were extremely bitter. They had been able to avoid being wiped out today all because the Master of Chaos had abandoned his dignity. Naturally, they felt extremely conflicted. He has long since surpassed the strongest. I'm no match for him. Even if I fought him to the death, I would only end up with my body and soul destroyed. Perhaps this is the final outcome. The Master of Chaos let out a long sigh. Compared to his own life, his dignity was really nothing. The starry sky was alone, and thoughts were flying everywhere. Yixian left the Chaos Temple. He did not continue on his journey, because he had encountered a difficult problem. This problem had troubled him for a long time. But Yixian knew that he would have to face it sooner or later. The Space-Time Master. At this moment, among the three strongest, Yixian had already obtained 2 of the small cauldrons. The last one was in the hands of the Space-Time Master. Yixian could force those who refused to submit and kill them directly, but the Space-Time Master made things difficult for Yixian. After all, when he was weak, the Space-Time Master had helped him a lot. Yixian could not use force to force the Space-Time Master. However, he had to obtain the small cauldron in the space-time master's hands. This was unavoidable, that why Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He suppressed his troubled thoughts. Since he could not think of a way, he could only take one step at a time. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and rushed towards the space-time temple. Space-time temple. The space-time master stood with his hands behind his back, looking into the distant starry sky, as if waiting for someone to arrive. Heavenly Master, is Yi Xian really here? Lu Yaoxing. After entering the 11th Yuehui, he had also become a half-step strongest, and was in charge of the space-time temple. At this moment, Lu Yaoxing was slightly excited because he had learned from the space-time master that Yi Xian was rushing towards the space-time temple. The two of them had a deep friendship in the past, so Lu Yaoxing was naturally excited about Yi Xian's arrival. He should be here soon. Go and welcome him, the space-time master said calmly. Yes, Heavenly Master. Lu Yaoxing hurriedly agreed, and then strode out of the space-time temple, ready to welcome Yi Xian's arrival. Sigh. The space-time master sighed with a complicated look in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Brother Yi, is it really you? When Yi Xian appeared, Lu Yaoxing was extremely excited. He walked towards Yi Xian with large strides, his face brimming with friendliness. Brother Lu, congratulations on becoming a half-step strongest. Seeing an old friend, Yi Xian smiled. The Heavenly Master knows that you are coming and ordered me to welcome you here, Lu Yaoxing said with a smile. Oh. Yi Xian was stunned, and then nodded in understanding. It seemed that the space-time master already knew his purpose for coming, and also knew what had happened to Hun Dun and Fate. However, this was also good. It also saved Yi Xian the trouble of asking for the small cauldron. The space-time master must have already made his decision. Under Lu Yaoxing's lead, Yi Xian entered the space-time temple. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way. They had already experienced a Yuehui. Chapter 1774. The Space-Time Temple. As soon as Yi Xian stepped in, he saw the space-time master waiting for him. Lu Yaoxing wisely retreated, leaving only Yi Xian and the space-time master in the space-time temple. Mr. Yi, we meet again. The space-time master looked back at Yi Xian with a smile. Yi Xian could sense the change in the space-time master's words. The words Mr. had an extremely different meaning. When his future self had returned to the past, he had taught the space-time master for a long time. At that time, the space-time master had addressed him as Mr. But in this life he no longer used this title. Now that they met again, the space-time master addressed him as Mr., proving that he had received some sort of acknowledgement from the space-time master. You know why I'm here. Yi Xian strolled over to the space-time master and looked calmly at him. Although Yi Xian did not mention the heaven-shattering cauldron, Yi Xian believed that the space-time master knew why he had come. Buzz! The space-time master flipped his hand, and the heaven-shattering cauldron appeared. Then, he calmly handed it to Yi Xian. There was no trace of embarrassment on his face, but a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Clearly, the space-time master had cut off his connection with the small cauldron. This had damaged his mind, and Yi Xian could not bear to see it. Yi Xian solemnly took the small cauldron, then cupped his hands and bowed. Although neither of them spoke, everything was said without words. Many thanks. Yi Xian had many things to say, but in the end, he only spat out these two words. No matter how much he said, it would be too hypocritical. Mister, there is no need to thank me. The small cauldron is very important to you. I will give it to you sooner or later. And now is the time. The space-time master paused slightly, then looked at Yi Xian with a solemn expression and said, But before you leave, I want to tell you the secret of these 3 small cauldrons. Perhaps it will be of some help to you. Secret? Yi Xian was taken aback. He was curious about the secret that the master of time and space was talking about. He had already obtained the small cauldron from chaos and fate, but he had always felt that something was off about it. However, he could not figure out what it was. Perhaps the secret that the master of time and space was talking about was exactly what he was puzzled about. Sir, please take a seat. The space-time master waved his hand and summoned 2 prayer mats, inviting Yi Xian to sit down and talk. When the 2 of them sat down, the atmosphere was clearly somewhat heavy. After a full 10 breaths of time, the space-time master slowly opened his mouth and said, "Sir, do you know why the 3 of us have 3 small cauldrons in our hands? Please enlighten me," Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. These 3 little cauldrons are known as the heaven-shattering cauldrons. However, to us 3 utmost powerful beings, they have another name. And that name is the Cauldrons of Origin. The Master of Time and Space explained slowly. Cauldron of Origin? Yi Xian was stunned. This was the first time he had heard this name. And at this moment, he had a faint understanding. Perhaps the Master of Space-Time would reveal an extremely shocking secret. As expected, the Master of Space-Time told him a secret regarding the 3 cauldrons. And this secret was related to the Chaos Verse. When the primordial chaos was opened, all living beings were born. When the first Eon began, the first cauldron appeared in the world, and then fell into the hands of the Master of Primordial Chaos. The Master of Primordial Chaos then became the supreme being of the first Eon. This first cauldron contained the power of primordial chaos, which was also known as the laws of primordial chaos. This cauldron helped the Master of Primordial Chaos comprehend the mysteries of the river of primordial chaos, causing his cultivation base to increase with each passing day. When the second Eon began, the Master of Destiny obtained the second cauldron. This second cauldron was similar to the first cauldron in that it contained the power of destiny, which also helped the Master of Destiny comprehend the mysteries of the river of destiny. The third Eon was the same. The Master of Space-Time obtained the third cauldron, comprehended the mysteries of the river of time, and became the Master of Space-Time. Thus, these 3 cauldrons each contained the laws of primordial chaos, destiny, and space-time. These 3 laws were the most fundamental things of the entire Chaos Verse. To put it simply, these 3 laws were the foundation of the Chaos Verse, and a series of things extended from this foundation. It was also because of the existence of these 3 laws that the Chaos Verse could operate normally. If any of these laws were lost, terrifying changes would occur to the Chaos Verse. The laws of primordial chaos contained all things, and everything was contained within them. The laws of destiny controlled the fates of all living beings. Every person was born with a predestined fate, and this was also known as destiny. The laws of space-time were even easier to explain. The past, present, and future were all contained within the laws of space-time. And when these 3 laws were first born, they existed within these 3 cauldrons. It was also because of these 3 cauldrons that the 3 paragons were born, and they were able to control the 3 rivers of time for their own use. The 3 laws, Yi Xian muttered in a daze. He seemed to have thought of something, and a look of astonishment flashed through his eyes. No wonder he had obtained the 2 cauldrons. On the way here, he had tried to comprehend their mysteries, but he hadn't discovered any forbidden secret arts. The only thing contained within them was the power of primordial chaos and destiny. Could this be the so-called origin energy of the primordial chaos and destiny space-time? Sir, you might have thought of it. The reason why these 3 cauldrons are called the cauldrons of origin is because they contain the 3 laws. They are the origin energy of the primordial chaos and destiny space-time. That is why the Chaos Verse operates normally. Not a single one of the 3 laws can be missing. Paragons can fall, but the 3 laws exist eternally. This is the ultimate truth of the Chaos Verse, and no one can break it. The Space-Time Lord said in a deep voice. This is the secret you spoke of? Yi Xian asked. No, I haven't finished. The next question is the most important one. The Space-Time Lord said with a grave expression. Yi Xian could also sense the fluctuations in the Space-Time Lord's emotions, and this caused him to listen carefully. He knew that what the Space-Time Lord was going to say next would be extremely important. Right now it is the 11th Eon. When the 12th Eon begins, the Chaos Verse will reach its end, and that door will appear at the end of the 12th Eon. Actually, I can already sense that when the Chaos Verse reaches its end, it will most likely be destroyed. Thus, in the past, The three of us took the cauldrons into the depths of the Chaos Verse, hoping to open that door and obtain the ultimate secrets of the Chaos Verse. Unfortunately, we all failed. That door is far too profound. It seems to be right in front of us, but we can't touch it. In fact, we might even suffer a calamity. That is the door of reincarnation. Not even forbidden figures can touch it, to say nothing of the three of you. Yi Xian understood the existence of that door better than the Space-Time Lord did. Given the cultivation bases of the three paragons, there was no way they could touch upon the secrets of that level. After all, in the history of the eternal universe, only the most powerful expert of the primordial era had ever opened that door. Everyone who came after him had failed. As for what lay beyond that door, only the most powerful expert of the primordial era knew. Chapter 1775. The Gate of Reincarnation? The Space-Time Lord murmured to himself. Then he smiled bitterly. This name is indeed very good. It seems that my guess was correct. When the Chaos Verse reaches its end, there will be an unimaginable destruction. Everything will be annihilated in the cycle of reincarnation. The Space-Time Lord sighed with emotion. He had lived until the 11th Yuanying, so he had long since sensed the danger that would occur in the future. After all, he was the Space-Time Lord, so he could faintly predict that some unpredictable things would happen in the future. What is the secret of the three cauldrons that you spoke of? Yi Xian went straight to the point. This was because what the Space-Time Lord had just said was only the tip of the iceberg. However, Yi Xian believed that the secret of the three cauldrons was absolutely not so simple. There must be some other functions that he did not know of. Actually, this is not a secret. It is merely a legend that comes from the three cauldrons, the Space-Time Lord said solemnly. What legend? Yi Xian asked. The Space-Time Lord took a deep breath, as if to stabilize his emotions. Then he finally said solemnly, these three cauldrons each contain the three laws of chaos, destiny and space. Legend has it that if someone can comprehend the three laws of chaos within the cauldrons, they can use their own strength to activate the three rivers and merge them into one to form the legendary River of Eternity. The three rivers merge into one to form the legendary River of Eternity? Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He was completely stunned. He had never imagined that the Space-Time Lord would reveal such an earth-shattering secret. The River of Eternity. Just these 4 words caused Yi Xian's heart to become extremely heavy. Even his breathing began to quicken. What was the River of Eternity? Yi Xian did not understand. He did not understand either. This was the first time he had heard of this name. However, the Space-Time Lord had said that the 3 rivers would merge into one to form the legendary River of Eternity. This River of Eternity was definitely not as simple as it seemed. It was probably unimaginably terrifying. What is the River of Eternity? What use does the River of Eternity have? Yi Xian quickly calmed himself down. He looked at the Space-Time King, waiting for him to give him an answer. In the past, the 3 of us tried to comprehend the 3 small cauldrons together. That was how we managed to obtain the information regarding the ancient river. The 3 of us even tried to combine the 3 great rivers into one and summon this legendary ancient river. But alas, we failed in the end. In the end, we came to a conclusion. Only one person can comprehend the primordial laws of time and space within the 3 cauldrons. Only then can the 3 great rivers be combined into one. As for what the eternal river is used for, it should be able to travel through time and space. This is the conclusion that the 3 of us came to in the end. The Space-Time Lord said solemnly. Traveling through time? Yi Xian was extremely stunned. He did not understand the meaning of this sentence, but his heart was beating extremely fast, and his breathing began to quicken. You should know that your future self once traveled against the flow of the river of time to return to the past, but he was only able to return to the past of this chaos verse. At most, he could only return to the first period. That was the limit. If my deductions are correct, this legendary ancient river of eternity not only possesses unparalleled world-suppressing might, but it also has the heaven-defying ability to travel through time and space, the Space-Time Lord said. You mean to say that the River of Eternity can break through the limits of the Chaos Verse and allow someone to return to the previous Chaos Verse? Yi Xian was stunned. That's right. The Space-Time Lord nodded solemnly. The previous Chaos Verse is 12 periods, but I believe that there is definitely a previous Chaos Verse. If you can use the River of Eternity to travel back in time, you will naturally be able to discover many great secrets unknown to others. When the Space-Time Lord finished speaking, Yi Xian was stunned speechless. His eyes began to glaze over. He had already thought of many things, and they were definitely not as simple as the Space-Time Lord had imagined. If the legendary ancient River of Eternity could break through the limits of the Chaos Verse and take him upstream to the previous Chaos Verse, did that mean that the River of Eternity had the ability to reverse time and space? Not only would it allow him to return to the previous Chaos Verse, but it would also allow him to return to the three most powerful eras of all time: the Primordial Era, the Primeval Era, and the Primordial Era. These three eras were known as the three most powerful eras of all time. 3,000 great Daos still existed, and the laws of the universe were fully manifested. Countless heaven-defying experts had been born. Moreover, if the River of Eternity really could take him back to the three great eras, where the myriad Daos competed for supremacy, then he would definitely be able to meet that handful of heaven-shaking, earth-shattering experts. Perhaps if he returned to the Primordial Era, he would be able to meet the legendary strongest expert of the Primordial Era. He might even be able to ask that person what was behind that door. When Yi Xian thought of this, his eyes turned crimson red. There was unconcealable excitement in his eyes. Mr. Yi, what's wrong? Seeing Yi Xian's flushed face, the Space-Time Lord was slightly startled. He clearly didn't understand why Yi Xian was so excited. Could it be because of the legendary ancient River of Eternity? Does the ancient River of Eternity really exist? Yi Xian abruptly raised his head to look at the Space-Time Lord, his eyes blazing with passion. It does exist, because this is information transmitted from the three small cauldrons. I believe that if you can comprehend the three origins of laws on your own, then perhaps you really can combine the three great rivers and make the legendary ancient River of Eternity appear in the world, said the Space-Time Lord. Many thanks. Yi Xian stood up and bowed solemnly. This secret was far too important to him. If the Space-Time Lord hadn't told him today, then perhaps he would never have known this secret. Mr. Yi, there's no need to thank me. Right now, the three small cauldrons are in your possession. Perhaps this is a fated opportunity. If you can comprehend the three origins of laws, then perhaps when the chaotic universe reaches its end, I can rely on you to find a way out, said the Space-Time Lord. I'll remember this favor. I'll definitely repay you in the future. Yi Xian didn't waste any words. He only gave the Space-Time Lord a guarantee. After that, the two of them chatted for half a day. Yi Xian stood up and bid farewell. He was impatient to comprehend the origins of laws within the three small cauldrons. Moreover, there were less than 30 million years before he would head to the Primordial Era's Forbidden Land. 30 million years seemed like a long time, but when it came to comprehending the origins of laws within the three small cauldrons, perhaps this amount of time was extremely short. Moreover, the trip to the Primordial Era's Forbidden Land was filled with danger. He had to make ample preparations, so he was too pressed for time. He could only end this conversation and find a place for seclusion to prepare for his trip to the Primordial Era's Forbidden Land. The Space-Time Lord personally sent Yi Xian off. Lu Yaoxing wanted to catch up with Yi Xian, but Yi Xian could only tactfully decline and hurriedly leave the Space-Time Temple. Chapter 1776. It was a withered star. Rays of starlight mist rose and gradually covered the entire star before it completely disappeared from the starry sky. It was as if the star did not exist in this starry sky universe. Inside the star, Yi Xian sat cross-legged as the halo of heaven burial reincarnation appeared on his body. The 12 divine gates rotated behind him, and the 3 small cauldrons floated in front of him. The origin of the 3 great laws? Yi Xian looked at the 3 small cauldrons in front of him quietly. His gaze was deep and serene. Obviously, he wanted to comprehend the 3 great laws in the 3 small cauldrons. If he succeeded, he would be able to combine the 3 great rivers and summon the legendary ancient Long River. Of course, Yi Xian knew that it was not that simple. However, he was confident that he could succeed. It was just that he did not know if he could make it in 30 million years. If he could comprehend the 3 elemental laws, he might not be able to combine the 3 elemental laws into one to form the eternal river. Just comprehending the 3 elemental laws would allow him to mobilize the 3 elemental laws in battle, and he would not need to fear these taboo characters. Therefore, regardless of whether it was to summon the ancient Long River or to prepare for the trip to the ancient impasse, he had to comprehend the 3 great laws within 30 million years. Phew! Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He calmed his mind and adjusted his mental state, allowing his essence, energy and spirit to reach a perfect state. Begin! Yi Xian picked up a small cauldron and probed his consciousness into the small cauldron. He began to comprehend the origin of the laws. The small cauldron contained the space-time law origin. It was also the easiest cauldron for Yi Xian to obtain. As he had cultivated space-time power before, he was extremely familiar with space-time Tao. Therefore, the small cauldron was his first choice. Buzz! When Yi Xian began to comprehend the first small cauldron, something wonderful happened. A weak space-time aura appeared on the first small cauldron, and it kept pulsating on the cauldron. A mysterious sound was faintly heard in the silent void. At the beginning, this profound sound was extremely weak, but along with the ceaseless passage of time, this sound grew louder and louder, and it was even to the extent that it reverberated endlessly like the morning bell, causing one's soul to tremble. Yi Xian suddenly frowned while his countenance suddenly turned pale, and a strand of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Obviously, comprehending the quintessence of the space-time laws had caused his soul to be injured, and even his mind had started to become unstable. Freeze! Yi Xian spat out the sound of thunder. Fortunately, he had cultivated the power of time and space. When he realized that something was wrong, he quickly activated the heaven burial art, stabilizing his divine soul and mind. Time passed in the blink of an eye. On a certain day thousands of years later, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. A strand of the presence of time erupted from his eyes. The small cauldron in his hand shone brightly as a mysterious and profound rune appeared. Wang! In an instant, the mysterious rune shot into Yi Xian's glabella, and an ancient aura erupted from Yi Xian's body. Success! Yi Xian roared in excitement. He had used a total of 10 million years to finally comprehend the quintessence of the space-time laws. It seemed that he could affect the space-time operation of the chaotic universe with just a raise of his hand. At this moment, Yi Xian was very confident that under the use of the power of time and space, even the space-time master would have to admit defeat. This was because the quintessence of time and space that he had comprehended had allowed Yi Xian to use the power of time and space to the extreme. At this moment, Yi Xian only needed to move his mind to summon the river of time, and he could even control the river of time to fight. Moreover, Yi Xian's cultivation base surpassed that of the omnipotent. With his cultivation base of the 12 heavenly gates, he would definitely display an extremely terrifying battle strength when he activated the river of time. Yi Xian wanted to try this power, but he still calmed his restless heart because he was pressed for time. He still had to comprehend the remaining 2 small cauldrons. This was because he had used 10 million years to comprehend the first small cauldron, and this was because he had cultivated the power of time and space before. The remaining 2 small cauldrons might take him even longer, so he had to speed up. Yi Xian calmed himself down and spat out a mouthful of foul air before he picked up the second tiny cauldron and started to comprehend the quintessence laws within it. The second cauldron was filled with the origin of the laws of fate. This was a great challenge for Yi Xian. He had just begun to comprehend it, but Yi Xian had already encountered a great problem. cryptic and difficult to understand. Every step was difficult. As Yi Xian comprehended the origin of the fate law, his brows furrowed. His comprehension speed was as slow as a turtle's. At this rate, even if he was given 50 million years, he wouldn't be able to comprehend the origin of the fate law. This won't do. At this rate, before I can comprehend the essence of the laws of fate, the ancient deadlands will have already been opened. Yi Xian spoke in a low and gloomy voice, and he temporarily gave up on comprehending the tiny cauldron, and started to think hard about if there was any way to speed up his comprehension. If the space-time master were to see this scene, he would definitely be dumbfounded, and would even reprimand Yi Xian for being too greedy. One had to know that the three strongest had once tried to comprehend the three tiny cauldrons together, but the three of them were unable to comprehend the quintessence of the laws of fate in the hands of others. In the end, they also failed. But now, Yi Xian had comprehended the space-time quintessence, and continued to comprehend the laws of fate. Although his speed was a little slower, he could still comprehend it, and the three strongest didn't even have the chance to do so. Therefore, Yi Xian was too greedy, and simply didn't know how to be content. Time passed bit by bit. Yi Xian was thinking hard. For 1,000 years, he had been thinking about how to speed up his comprehension of the fate law, but he still couldn't think of a way. Damn it! If I had cultivated the power of fate before, I would definitely be able to speed up my comprehension. Yi Xian had just finished speaking when his expression suddenly froze. After 3 breaths of time, he slapped his forehead, and an extremely self-mocking expression appeared on his face. I'm really stupid. Why would I go to such a dead end? Yi Xian's thoughts were suddenly enlightened. He had actually forgotten that although he hadn't cultivated the power of fate, he still had an extremely terrifying forbidden technique. Eternal Dream. Yes, it was the Eternal Dream. He had sunk into the Eternal Dream for 10,000 eras, and turned into countless people. He had even deduced the techniques of these people. As long as he used the Eternal Dream, he would naturally be able to comprehend the quintessence of the laws of fate like the Master of Fate. It would naturally be twice the result with half the effort. Rumble. Yi Xian finally came to his senses, and directly activated the Eternal Dream. His entire aura became extremely deep, and was shrouded in fog. In the next moment, the power of fate revolved around Yi Xian's body, and he began to comprehend the second tiny cauldron. As expected, after using the Eternal Dream, Yi Xian began to comprehend the second tiny cauldron at an extremely fast speed. His speed was even faster than before. Time passed quickly, and time passed quickly. This time, Yi Xian only used 3 million years to comprehend the quintessence of the laws of fate. The second rune fused into his glabella, and completely grasped the quintessence of the laws of fate. Chapter 1777. Great! Yi Xian clapped his hands and laughed. After comprehending the destiny law of origin, he could now summon the river of destiny and mobilize its power. However, after Yi Xian's excitement, he calmed himself down again. There was only one small cauldron left. As long as he comprehended the primal chaos law of origin, he would have succeeded. Continue. Yi Xian did not delay. He picked up the last small cauldron, and began to comprehend the primal chaos law of origin. With the help of the Eternal Dream, Yi Xian's speed was extremely fast. He was very familiar with the primal chaos law of origin. There was no difficulty at all. However, Yi Xian actually took 15 million years to comprehend the last small cauldron. It was twice as long as comprehending the destiny law of origin. It had to be said that the primal chaos law of origin was profound and profound. It was not that Yi Xian was not fast enough, but that it was too profound. Fortunately, Yi Xian finally succeeded. Buzz! The 3 small cauldrons floated in the void. Yi Xian's eyes were deep, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. There was an indescribable excitement in his eyes. At this moment, he had comprehended all 3 primal chaos law of origin. He could summon the 3 long rivers, and mobilize them for battle. This had also directly raised his combat strength to another level. It could be said that he had taken another step forward. He also had great confidence in his trip to the ancient Forbidden Land. Yi Xian quickly calmed down. He secretly calculated the time. He had used 28 million years to comprehend the 3 small cauldrons. Now there were only 2 million years left before the trip to the ancient Forbidden Land. Although time was a little short, Yi Xian still wanted to take the last step. The 3 long rivers would merge into one and become the legendary Eternal River. This was Yi Xian's ambition and goal. Boom! Yi Xian broke out of the star. The star that he was in seclusion exploded, and he appeared in the starry universe. Come! Yi Xian did not hesitate. The power of the 3 primal chaos law of origin bloomed, and immediately caused an extremely shocking change in the starry universe. Rumble! The starry sky dimmed, and all things were distorted. Only the sound of crashing waves could be heard in the void of the heavens. There were also 3 rivers passing through the universe and faintly appearing. Whoosh! The 3 great rivers had existed since time immemorial. Their great waves overturned the sky, shaking the entire starry universe. Their immeasurable power was world-shaking, and it was simply awe-inspiring. At this moment, Yi Xian was dressed in black. His hair was fluttering in the wind, and his clothes were flapping in the wind. He looked up at the 3 long rivers above his head, and his entire body was emitting an incomparably terrifying aura. Rumble! 3 long rivers. The Tongtian pierced through the ground. They were completely connected to Yi Xian's aura. The power of these 3 long rivers was too terrifying. Even Yi Xian's mind was trembling with excitement. With these 3 long rivers by his side, Yi Xian would be fearless even in the face of a taboo character. He would even dare to fight to the death. However, the 3 long rivers were not enough for Yi Xian. What he really wanted was the primal chaos river. Only when the 3 long rivers were combined into one could the primal chaos river appear. Boundless chaos, primal chaos, primal chaos. Rumble! The 12 heavenly gates rumbled and rotated. The halo of heaven burial samsara bloomed terrifyingly. Yi Xian's hands formed a circle, and he struck out the 3 primal chaos laws in an attempt to combine the 3 long rivers. Whoosh! Something earth-shattering happened. The 3 long rivers were in a terrifying riot. The shocking waves roared and surged, and they actually began to combine. An indescribable aura also erupted at this moment. Condense! Yi Xian roared at the sky. His eyes were fiery red, and he crazily urged his cultivation to combine the 3 long rivers. Boom! All of a sudden, the moment the waves of the 3 long rivers collided, an unimaginable force burst out and acted directly on Yi Xian's body. Bang! Barf! Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was sent flying by the force. His body exploded horribly, and a large amount of blood spurted out. Backlash! The backlash of the 3 long rivers. How terrifying were the 3 long rivers. Yi Xian summoned the 3 long rivers alone, but he actually wanted to combine the 3 long rivers. This was not a power that he could control at all. It was too much. It was really too much. With Yi Xian's current cultivation, although he had comprehended the 3 primal chaos laws and could mobilize the power of the 3 long rivers, it was impossible for him to combine the 3 long rivers into one and transform them into the primal chaos river. If Yi Xian were to forcefully combine the 3 great rivers into one, then the backlash would most likely take his life. The 3 long rivers were not just for show. There were countless chaotic universes. The power of the backlash was enough to destroy Yi Xian's body and soul. Qi! Yi Xian was bathed in blood. He stabilized his injuries and turned back. He looked at the 3 long rivers with an extremely unwilling expression. Damn it! Yi Xian instantly understood. With his current cultivation, he could not combine the 3 long rivers. This was the most fundamental problem. Whoosh! Under Yi Xian's unwilling gaze, the 3 long rivers gradually turned illusory, and then completely disappeared from the starry sky. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. His expression turned into helplessness. The backlash was too terrifying. Even the 12 heavenly gates could not withstand it. Fortunately, Yi Xian was only slightly injured. It was not enough to take his life. The 12 heavenly gates could be considered to be invulnerable. They had protected him from the consequences of this adventure. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed helplessly. His cultivation was his greatest weakness. He could only temporarily give up on the idea of combining the 3 long rivers. He could only wait for his cultivation to improve. Perhaps only then would he have the opportunity to combine the 3 long rivers into the eternal long rivers. Wang. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the starry sky. The 12 heavenly gates rotated. He began to recover from his injuries. Only by maintaining his peak state could he face the trials of the future. Fortunately, Yi Xian's injuries were not too serious. Moreover, he had many chaotic sacred treasures in his possession. They were enough to allow him to recover at the fastest speed possible. However, this still took up 100,000 years of Yi Xian's time. The stars in the sky rotated. 3 small cauldrons were placed in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at them with rapt attention. His injuries had already been healed. His cultivation had also returned to its peak. Wang. Yi Xian's glabella flickered. The ancient bronze scripture appeared. As the pages of the scripture kept flipping, the 3 small cauldrons in front of Yi Xian turned into 3 beams of light and merged into the ancient bronze scripture. 10 small cauldrons. Yi Xian held the ancient bronze scripture in his hands. He kept flipping the pages of the scripture. A total of 10 small cauldrons imprinted on each page of the scripture. At this moment, Yi Xian already had 10 small cauldrons in his hands. There were still 2 left. According to the heartless man, there was an 11th small cauldron in the ancient deadland. It was also something that he was determined to obtain. Although Yi Xian was extremely disappointed that the 3 long rivers did not transform into the eternal long rivers, he had comprehended the 3 great law origins. He could activate the 3 long rivers in battle. This made Yi Xian feel slightly gratified. The trip to the ancient deadland is coming. I have to make some preparations. Yi Xian muttered. Chapter 1778. There were still more than 1,000,000 years before the date Yi Xian and the Heartless agreed upon. Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry to leave, as he still needed to make ample preparations. Buzz! With a flip of his hand, Yi Xian summoned a dozen Qingquan pouches. As he opened them, thousands of terrifying spiritual lights flickered in the cosmos. These were chaos treasures Yi Xian had plundered. The value of each one was unimaginable. Yi Xian wanted to use these treasures to forge some terrifying forbidden weapons. This was also a guarantee for his trip to the ancient deadlands. First, Yi Xian created 3,000 grains of quicksand. They were only a tiny pinch in his hand, and Yi Xian called them soulfall sand. However, soulfall sand was not to be underestimated. It contained 9 types of chaos poison, making it an extremely vicious forbidden weapon. Next, Yi Xian forged a 9 extinction soul destruction banner. This banner was forged from 81 types of extremely and poisonous materials. It was extremely vicious and specialized in destroying souls. Finally, Yi Xian combined the astral origin art with the heaven burial art. He used thousands of chaos treasures to forge 365 formation flags. They were also inscribed with the most vicious formations. They were supreme treasures for sneak attacks. Of course, these 3 extremely vicious treasures weren't much of a threat to taboo figures. However, Yi Xian had a terrifying taboo technique like the Great Dream of Eternity. So these 3 treasures instantly became extremely terrifying. Yi Xian used 1,000,000 years to create the forbidden power of death using the Eternal Dream, and poured it all into these 3 vicious weapons. Even Yi Xian's cultivation was greatly damaged. After doing all this, Yi Xian still felt that it wasn't enough. He even poured the 3 law origins he had just comprehended into them. After doing all this, Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. He carefully put the 3 extremely vicious treasures into his Qingquan pouch. Yi Xian swallowed a large number of pills to restore his lost cultivation to its peak. At this time, the trip to the ancient deadlands was nearing. Let's go. Yi Xian's gaze focused as he executed stellar teleportation and headed directly towards the last day's grounds. Because there were merely 10,000 years left until the agreement between him and the Heartless was fulfilled. Originally, Yi Xian wanted to make a trip to the heaven-devouring devil hall and kill the heaven-devouring devil sovereign along the way to settle the grudges of the past. However, Yi Xian did not have enough time. He could only put this matter aside for now. When he returned from the ancient extremis, killing the heaven-devouring demon lord would be as easy as slaughtering a pig. After all, the trip to the ancient extremis was the most important. The last days. Boom. As soon as Yi Xian arrived, the heartless person quietly appeared. She was surrounded by an aura of death. Although she did not release any power, she gave off an extremely palpitating feeling. It was obvious that 30 million years had passed, and the injuries she suffered before had already recovered. Yi Xian could feel the threat that the other party posed to him. "You're very punctual." The heartless person glanced at Yi Xian indifferently and discovered that Yi Xian's cultivation was still the same as before. This made her secretly relieved. To be honest, she was really afraid that Yi Xian would combine the 12 heaven gates in the next 30 million years. Otherwise, it was very likely that an unforeseen event would occur during this trip to the ancient extremis. Unfortunately, the heartless person did not know that although Yi Xian's cultivation had not improved in the past 30 million years, his combat strength had increased again. The 3 long rivers had become his trump card. Moreover, he had created 3 extremely vicious treasures that were extremely harmful to even taboo figures. I've always been very punctual, and I'm especially curious about the ancient extremis. I'm also determined to obtain the 11th small cauldron, Yi Xian said indifferently. Your courage is commendable. I hope you can achieve your wish. However, I have to remind you that those who can enter the ancient extremis are all old monsters who have lived for countless years. Each of them can be considered a taboo. You'd better be careful, said the heartless person. Thank you for the reminder. Yi Xian smiled faintly, but a sinister glint flashed through his eyes. Yi Xian was absolutely certain that the heartless person was using him. She wanted to achieve a certain goal in the ancient extremis, and it was definitely not just for the 11th small cauldron. Of course, Yi Xian was also using her. There was no way he would trust her. Both sides were just using each other. The ancient astral path to the ancient extremis is about to open. We will set off now. Follow closely behind me. The heartless person did not waste any words. The forbidden light rippled with a loud rumble, transforming into a black beam of light that entered the cosmos. Let's see what tricks you can play. Yi Xian sneered inwardly as he followed the heartless person into the vast cosmos. The cosmos was boundless, and the cosmos was vast. There were many ancient astral paths in the chaos verse. Some had been opened by predecessors, while others had been formed naturally. The man-made ancient astral paths were the masterpieces of taboo characters. Although they could be said to be dangerous, so long as one knew the path, they would naturally be more daunting than dangerous. However, there were some naturally formed ancient astral paths that even taboo characters had to be wary of. For example, this ancient starry sky path that led to the ancient extremis was naturally formed, and it contained unimaginable dangers. So it was extremely likely that one's body and soul would be obliterated if one took a wrong step. At this moment, Yi Xian and the heartless person were in an extremely desolate region of the cosmos. There was not even a single star to be seen, giving off a feeling of lethargy as far as the eye could see. Is this where the ancient astral path will open? Yi Xian frowned. The heartless person nodded. That's right. There are still about 1,000 years before the ancient astral path opens. We just have to wait here patiently. What about those taboo characters? Yi Xian looked around this extremely desolate region of the cosmos. Apart from him and the heartless person, he did not see any other taboo characters. Don't worry, they will definitely come. You should still worry about yourself. After all, you have a relationship with many of them, the heartless person said with an unfathomable smile. Rumble. Just as the two of them were talking, a terrifying fluctuation came from the distant starry sky. The forbidden death light was spreading over, and a figure was approaching from afar. The ancestor of all beasts. The third one to arrive was the ancestor of all beasts who had crossed paths with Yi Xian in the past. After not seeing him for many years, the ancestor of all beasts was still full of pressure as before. When he saw Yi Xian here, a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. He would never forget that when Yi Xian was crossing the primal chaos heavenly punishment, that boundless dark figure walked out from his soul, causing his mind to tremble and panic to the extreme. He was not sure if Yi Xian was the reincarnation of a taboo, but he was sure that Yi Xian was not an ordinary person. However, when the ancestor of all beasts saw the heartless person beside Yi Xian, he frowned slightly. He obviously knew the heartless person's origin, but he did not expect Yi Xian to be with her. Chapter 1779. Young friend Yi, we meet again. The ancestor of beasts strolled over and nodded calmly at Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian had once helped him break the curse of the star behemoths. Although he'd already repaid the favor, they could still be considered old acquaintances. Greetings, fellow Taoist. Yi Xian cupped his hands in return. He didn't address the ancestor of beasts respectfully, because he didn't need to at his current level of cultivation. The ancestor of beasts smiled faintly, not minding at all. He also viewed Yi Xian as someone of the same cultivation level. After all, the 12 heavenly gates weren't just for show. Rumble. At the same time, two terrifying auras as ancient as the heavens rolled over, and two mysterious figures quietly appeared in Yi Xian's field of vision. It really is them. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed as he recognized the newcomers. Aeon Shadow, an old monster who'd lived in countless chaotic universes. He stared silently at Yi Xian, then swept his gaze over the heartless man. The other person was a forbidden character who'd walked out of the river of chaos. He was still shrouded in the forbidden light of death, but his scarlet eyes were fixed on Yi Xian as he silently assessed Yi Xian. Yi Xian, we meet again. Aeon Shadow strolled over to Yi Xian and looked down at Yi Xian from above, his eyes as deep and unfathomable as an ancient pond. Should I call you Time or Time? Yi Xian asked coolly. Ah. Aeon Shadow blinked, then glanced at the heartless man, understanding flashing through his scarlet eyes. It seems this girl has told you everything. That's good too. Since you already know my origins, it saves me the trouble of telling you myself. As for my former title, I've long since forgotten it. You can call me Time if you want, because that's what they all call me, Aeon Shadow said coolly. Old man, don't think that you can take advantage of your seniority in front of me, just because you've lived for a long time. Wu Xian's expression was cold. The forbidden death light was fluctuating terrifyingly. It was clear that being called a girl by the eternal shadow made her feel discontent. Wang Guyin Shadow sneered. You've only learned a few things. You're just a survivor of the previous chaos verse. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? Boom. The heartless person's beautiful eyes turned cold, and a scarlet color rose from the bottom of her eyes. The rolling death light soared into the sky. Clearly, she was really angry, and her jade-like hands were slightly raised. We haven't even entered the ancient forbidden ground, and the ancient path of stars hasn't opened yet. Could it be that you want to fight here? The forbidden figure, who had emerged from the river of chaos, spoke in a hoarse voice. As he spoke, the Aeon Shadow and the heartless man both stopped breathing and fell silent. One had to know that this forbidden figure, who had walked out of the river of chaos, had lived for an unfathomable amount of time. Perhaps he had lived for even longer than the shadow of eternity, which was why the two of them were wary of him. Yi Xian, this isn't a place you should have come to, but since you're here, you should be prepared to die, the forbidden figure from the river of chaos said indifferently. The taboo figure that walked out of the river of primal chaos spoke indifferently. His unfathomable words echoed in all directions. It was obvious that he was targeting Yi Xian. Back when he had emerged from the river of chaos, he had wanted to kill Yi Xian. If not for his misgivings, he wouldn't have let Yi Xian live until now. I think I'll live well. Maybe you'll be the one who dies? Yi Xian said indifferently, not fearing the other party's threat at all. Primal Chaos Supreme God, he doesn't take you seriously. I think you should save your breath, Wang Guiyin's shadow sneered. The forbidden entity from the river of primal chaos looked on coldly at Aeon's shadow, but didn't say anything. After all, he couldn't be bothered to engage in a war of words. Everyone is here. It's really lively. Rumble. Black and white chessboard lights, life and death auras, and starlight spread out as the chess ancestor arrived with the black and white chessboard in his hand. However, the chess ancestor was very different from the other forbidden figures. Not only was he surrounded by the forbidden death light, but half of his life force also appeared. He gave off a strange feeling of being half dead. You're here to join in the fun? Aren't you afraid of dying in the ancient forbidden land? The myriad beast's ancestor sneered. Even dead people like you are here. Why can't a half-dead existence like me come? The chess ancestor smiled warmly, unaffected by the myriad beast's ancestor's provocation. However, when he looked at Yi Xian, he nodded and smiled amiably, as though he was expressing goodwill to Yi Xian. Looking at the black and white light surrounding the chess ancestor, Yi Xian's eyes were extremely deep. Why did the chess ancestor, a forbidden figure, not only have the forbidden death light, but half of his life force? Perhaps sensing the doubts in Yi Xian's heart, Heartless sent a voice transmission. The chess ancestor is half dead. He was the one who established the Chaos Star Master lineage. However, he's a servant of the Chaos Universe. When the Chaos Universe's samsara was destroyed, the apocalyptic calamity was the weakest for him. He relied on the means of a Chaos Star Master to preserve half of his life force, allowing him to escape the calamity. He ended up in his half-dead state. However, this person is extremely ambitious. He wants to become a true living person, one of the few terrifying forbidden lands. He originally thought that he would be stronger than us, because he was half dead. But he never expected that the life and death auras would cancel each other out, resulting in him being the weakest. However, this person is extremely scheming. He even treats forbidden figures as chess pieces. Although his cultivation level is lacking, he has many means. You have to be careful not to fall into his trap. Heartless said a lot, and even gave the chess ancestor a pertinent evaluation. This also made Yi Xian take a deep look at the chess ancestor. From the looks of it, this old fellow wasn't a good person either. Of course, it wasn't just the chess ancestor. None of the forbidden figures present were good people. All of them were scheming and astute, and each of them had a powerful cultivation level. And now, Yi Xian had seen all these people before. According to his speculation, there would be other forbidden figures coming soon. Who were these forbidden figures that he had never met before? Yi Xian, you really are here. Suddenly, just as Yi Xian was pondering, a sinister voice echoed in the starry sky. A figure covered in death light walked over from the edge of the starry sky. Rumble. With this person's appearance, the terrifying forbidden death light blotted out the sky, causing all the forbidden figures present to look at each other in shock. They were not shocked by the person's cultivation level. What they were truly shocked by was the person's aura. This was because the other party's aura was extremely unfamiliar. It meant that they did not know this forbidden figure. One had to know that forbidden figures had all interacted with each other before. Furthermore, they had lived for extremely long periods of time. If even they had never seen a forbidden figure before, it meant that the other party was very likely a forbidden existence in the present era. This was simply inconceivable. Just as everyone was guessing the other party's identity, the forbidden figure instantly appeared in front of them. And a face that Yi Xian was extremely familiar with also appeared in front of him. Chapter 1780. It's you. Yi Xian looked at the newcomer in astonishment. Even though Yi Xian had been calm from the beginning to the end in front of all the taboos present, his expression suddenly changed when he saw this person. The Undying Heaven Lord. That's right, it was the Undying Heaven Lord. He was covered in death light, and his eyes were scarlet. Terrifying death chi surrounded his body, and there was no sign of life on him at all. His face was pale, and his gaze was sinister. He stared at Yi Xian like a venomous ghost. The killing intent in his eyes was so dense that it seemed like he wanted to skin Yi Xian alive. Yi Xian, I'm still alive. You didn't expect this, did you? Boom, boom, boom. The undying Heaven Lord walked toward Yi Xian step by step. However, with every step he took, the starry sky trembled. The forbidden death power that filled the sky was extremely terrifying. Yi Xian calmed down after his initial shock. Although he was surprised that the undying Heaven Lord was still alive and had turned into a taboo, he did not see the undying Heaven Lord as a threat. Go to hell! Roar! In the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord roared with venomous hatred. He had suffered so much in order to come back to life, all for the sake of turning Yi Xian into ashes. No, he wanted to eat Yi Xian's flesh and drink his blood. Even then, he would not be able to dispel the hatred in his heart. Rumble! The forbidden death power covered the sky and turned into a giant palm that smashed down on Yi Xian. This was an attack from a taboo, and it was extremely terrifying. You're just a piece of trash. If I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Boom! Yi Xian's 5 fingers raised into the sky, and the heaven burial reincarnation chain exploded in the starry sky. The palm that covered the sky smashed down on the undying Heaven Lord. Rumble! The two of them matched each other's words. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Both wanted to kill the other, so their attacks were earth-shattering. Bind! Suddenly, before the two of them could exchange blows, the chess ancestor appeared in front of them. The black and white chessboard in his hand flickered with starlight and actually dissolved the two's attacks. Fellow Taoists, please stop. Chess ancestor's intervention caused Yi Xian to frown slightly. Undying Heaven Lord stared coldly, but both of them stopped at the same time. After all, everyone present was a taboo, and the situation could be said to be extremely complicated. Naturally, he would not offend anyone if he could. Senior, Yi Xian and I have an irreconcilable enmity. Please don't interfere. The undying Heaven Lord appeared very humble, and even addressed the chess ancestor as a senior. Clearly, he had not lost his cool and knew who he could offend and who he could not. Fellow Taoist, you're being too modest. Fellow Taoist, being able to transform into a taboo means that we're fellow Taoists. You can just call me fellow Taoist. However, we taboos have set a rule for the trip to the ancient Deadland. Before entering the ancient Deadland, no one is to fight, no matter how great the grudge is. If anyone violates this rule, the others will rise together to kill them, said Chess Ancestor with a smile. The undying Heaven Lord's expression changed slightly. Then he looked around at the taboos present. Indeed, he discovered that they were looking at him with unfriendly gazes. If fellow Taoist really wants to fight with him, we will not interfere in this matter after we enter the ancient Deadland, said Chess Ancestor warmly. All right. The undying Heaven Lord nodded slowly and stared viciously at Yi Xian. It was as though he was telling Yi Xian that he would not be able to live for long. Yi Daoyu, please abide by the rules set by us taboos. Chess Ancestor turned around and smiled at Yi Xian. Is what he said true? Yi Xian frowned slightly and looked at Wu Xian beside him. He wanted to confirm if this matter was true. Originally, Yi Xian had the intention to kill Undying here. If he really entered the ancient Deadland with Undying, who knew when this fellow would secretly stab him? That's right. We the Taboo Realm have set a rule. Before entering the ancient era's danger grounds, no one is allowed to fight. If anyone violates this rule, then everyone will join hands to kill that person, the heartless person replied. All right. Yi Xian nodded calmly. However, a ruthless look flashed across his eyes. He never believed in rules. He only believed that whoever had the bigger fist was right. This was because rules were set by people. If one wanted to break the rules, one would need to have the strength to ignore the rules. Yi Xian did not believe that these taboos would be so honest. They probably had their own thoughts and methods. However, Yi Xian could not make a move now. He could only wait for an opportunity to kill Undying secretly. After all, Undying hated him to the core. It was only right to kill him as soon as possible. There is still 1,000 years before the ancient starry path opens. Let's wait patiently and not cause any more trouble, said Primal Chaos Supreme God. He was also a taboo who walked out of the long river of chaos. He spoke faintly. His scarlet eyes looked around at everyone, giving off a faint pressure. That's right. This ancient starry path is already unstable. If we really fight here, this part of the starry sky will collapse, said Eternal Shadow coldly. Clearly, these two people had the strongest cultivation bases among these taboo characters, and they were vaguely showing signs of taking the lead. Yi Xian, once you enter the ancient Deadland, it will be the time of your death. Undying Heaven Lord looked at Yi Xian sinisterly. Then, he found a place to sit cross-legged and closed his eyes. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? Once we enter the ancient Deadland, I will definitely kill you. Yi Xian did not speak nonsense. He only looked at Undying Heaven Lord coldly. In his heart, he had already sentenced him to death. It was just that Yi Xian was extremely puzzled. How did this Undying Heaven Lord come back from the dead? How did he become a taboo? One must know that back then, he personally destroyed Undying Heaven Lord's body and soul. It was impossible for Undying Heaven Lord to survive. Also, how terrifying was a taboo tribulation? Back then, he personally saw the human Tao Lord fail to pass the tribulation. Even the human Tao Lord, who had such a strong cultivation base, failed. How could the Undying Heaven Lord become a taboo? Just as Yi Xian was guessing, several extremely terrifying fluctuations transmitted over, causing Yi Xian's thoughts to turn. He wondered which taboo character had arrived. Rumble. Everyone, I've made you wait for a long time. A black-robed figure arrived. His entire body was also shrouded in death chi. It was just that no one could see his appearance clearly. Other than the death chi, there was also an indescribable aura of laws revolving around him, causing people to feel their hearts palpitating. Who is he? Yi Xian only glanced at this person, and his mind actually trembled. He secretly sent a sound transmission to Wuxia to ask. The death divinity. I don't know which chaotic universe he came from. He comprehended the grand Tao of death. You should be careful. Wuxia gave a brief introduction. Clearly, he did not know much about this person's origin. After all, the chaotic universe had been destroyed countless times. It was already a miracle for one person to survive after each chaotic universe was destroyed. However, there was one thing in common. Anyone who could survive would definitely be considered a peerless genius. The death divinity. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. From these 4 words, he could feel that this person comprehended the grand Tao of death. The technique he cultivated should also be extremely terrifying. Chapter 1781. In the eternal universe, there were 3,000 great Taos. The great Tao of death was only one of them, and its opposite was the great Tao of life, which was the technique that Yi Fengtian cultivated. However, as a taboo, the god of death was already a dead person, but this was also in line with the extreme of his great Tao of death, and his cultivation was probably extremely terrifying. Ha ha ha. Old fellows, we meet again. Laughter came from the distant starry sky, but in an instant 2 figures appeared. However, when Yi Xian saw the appearance of these 2 people, his expression changed slightly. One of them was wearing a black robe, and the other was wearing a pale white robe, black to the extreme, and white to the point of being dazzling. These 2 people were a man and a woman, but their appearances were extremely terrifying. A bloody tongue stuck out of their mouth, and a pair of scarlet eyes. Not only were they surrounded by the taboo death light, but there was also a black and white chi flowing around them. The black and white sovereigns cultivate the great Tao of chaos of yin and yang. One body with 2 lives, and life and death are bound together. Perhaps one's cultivation is nothing, but when the 2 of them work together, their cultivation is absolutely terrifying. Wuxia introduced. The black and white sovereigns? The great Tao of chaos of yin and yang? Yi Xian muttered to himself. These 2 monsters were not good people at first glance, and Yi Xian more or less knew a little about the great Tao of yin and yang. Those who could cultivate this kind of great Tao were extremely perverted. After all, when he first came to the chaotic world, Ji Yin Yang cultivated this kind of great Tao. but he was killed by Yi Xian early on. Greetings, fellow Taoists. Another person arrived. This person's face was like a crown of jade, and he was extraordinarily handsome. His clothes were whiter than snow, and his hair was as dazzling as floating snow. However, his skin was too pale and bloodless, which completely affected his handsome appearance. The god of Ghost Tao cultivates the great Tao of Ghost Tao, and his methods are extremely strange. Wu Xian introduced this person to Yi Xian again. The great Tao of Ghost Tao. Yi Xian nodded slightly, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. He was extremely curious about the great Tao of Ghost Tao. With the arrival of these great taboo characters, the crowd fell silent again. Many of the taboo characters also did not speak much. Clearly, they were all apprehensive of something. One had to know that many of the taboos present were not from the same era. What they knew was only partial information. The only reason they were gathered together was because of the ancient forbidden lands. How many more taboos have yet to arrive? Yi Xian secretly transmitted his voice to the Heartless man. I don't know, Heartless said. Don't know? Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. Although the ancient deadlands are important, not every taboo will come here. As for how many taboo figures there are, I've seen many of them, but there are also some I've never seen before. After all, many taboo figures are waiting for this chaos verse to come to an end. Only when the chaos verse reaches its end will they all appear. The Heartless man explained. I see. Yi Xian nodded. Time passed quickly. In just 500 years, no new taboo characters had arrived. A slight change had occurred in this part of the starry sky as well. A faint aura of desolation and vicissitudes was growing, causing one's heart to feel heavy. The ancient starry sky path is about to appear. The chess grandmaster looked up at the sky solemnly. Everyone could feel it even without him saying it. Rumble. Suddenly, the distant starry sky trembled again as a figure came towards them. Everyone was stunned as they looked at the newcomer. Boom! A ray of death light swept across the starry sky as a beautiful woman strolled through the starry sky. Although she was surrounded by the forbidden death light, it was enough to mesmerize anyone who looked at her. It was just that her temperament was too extraordinary, and did not seem like a taboo dead person at all. Human Tao. Boom! The undying Heaven Lord stood up in shock as he recognized the person. It was the suspected dead human Tao Lord. At this moment, Yi Xian was truly shocked. When he saw the familiar face of the human Tao Lord, his thoughts instantly froze. He clearly remembered that the human Tao Lord had died in his arms, and was buried by him. He did not expect the human Tao Lord to still be alive. Mr. Yi, how have you been? The human Tao Lord ignored the undying heaven and earth, and walked to Yi Xian's side. Although she was surrounded by the forbidden death light, it did not affect her unparalleled beauty at all. You're still alive? Yi Xian asked in a daze. Alive? The human Tao Lord smiled bitterly, and shook her head slightly. I'm just a dead person now. How can I still be alive? Yes, you are indeed dead. Yi Xian sighed as he looked at the forbidden death light that lingered around the human Tao Master's body. Humph! A cold snort came from afar. The undying Heaven Lord glared at Yi Xian, and the human Tao Lord with a hint of fear in his eyes. Looks like you're in trouble, the human Tao Lord said softly. He's just a piece of trash. He'll die sooner or later, Yi Xian said. Yi Xian was in a good mood after reuniting with an old friend. The ancient path of stars had yet to appear, so Yi Xian began to chat with the human Tao Lord. It turned out that the human Tao Lord had failed her tribulation, but she hadn't truly died. She had experienced the process of life and death, and had comprehended the pinnacle of death. In the end, she had turned into a taboo, and walked out of the tomb. But from that moment on, she was no longer a living person. Moreover, as a taboo, she immediately felt the pressure of the chaotic universe will. She could only hide temporarily until the ancient forbidden land opened. Only then did she finally appear before Yi Xian. According to the human Tao Lord, all taboo characters could sense the ancient forbidden land's existence. She had found it based on her own intuition, which was why she was the last to arrive. Mr. Yi, I can sense that there's something I need in this so-called ancient forbidden land. It should be very important to me. I hope you can help me, the human Tao Lord said bluntly. What do you sense? Yi Xian secretly asked. Anger. A kind of anger that can turn me back into a living person, the human Tao Lord answered after some hesitation. Turn you back into a living person? Yi Xian was shocked when he heard this. Uncertainty flashed through his eyes. Perhaps the human Tao Lord had just stepped into the forbidden land and didn't understand what would happen if she turned back into a living person. But Yi Xian knew what it would be like to become a living person. That small group of earth-shattering absolute beings was the taboo of taboos. The human Tao Lord had turned into a taboo character from life to death. If she could return from death to life and become a living person again, she would become one of those earth-shattering absolute beings. Could this be the heartless man's true goal? Yi Xian was secretly shocked. Rumble. The starry sky trembled. It was bleak and heavy. An illusory and mysterious ancient path appeared, jolting Yi Xian awake. It's appeared. The primal chaos god said coldly. He took a step forward and headed for the ancient path of stars. Chapter 1782. Let's go. The heartless man called out to Yi Xian and quickly entered the ancient path of the starry sky. The other taboos followed closely behind. You and I will travel together. Yi Xian called out to the master of human Tao, and the two of them entered the ancient path of the starry sky. The ancient path of the starry sky was bleak. It was a mottled and incomplete ancient path. Faint starlight grew under everyone's feet and gathered to form a starry sky path that stretched as far as the eye could see. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, when Yi Xian stepped onto the ancient path of the starry sky, he heard bleak and sorrowful cries. The indistinct cries made Yi Xian's heart tremble, and a sour feeling surged in his heart. Be careful. This is the mourning of an ancient war soul. Don't be disturbed by it, or a great terror will grow and take your life. The heartless man hurriedly transmitted a message to Yi Xian and reminded him of the dangers of the ancient path of the starry sky. The ancient war soul is mourning, Yi Xian muttered, and the sour feeling in his heart grew stronger. He seemed to understand the cries. Although his soul trembled and became unstable, it did not cause him any harm. Yi Xian's intuition told him that he did not believe the heartless man's advice. Instead, he listened carefully to the indistinct cries, and a sorrowful and lonely feeling appeared around him. Cultivate my war soul, and kill my way to the 9 heavens. Heaven and earth weep blood. My soul will not be destroyed. Heaven and earth are heartless. All living beings suffer. Sprinkle my divine blood on the heavens, and use my divine bones to help the next life. Kill. Sorrowful cries continued to ring in Yi Xian's ears, and blurry figures walked past him. Heaven and earth weep blood. Heaven and earth weep blood. That was the spilling of the blood of the predecessors. That was the birth of eternal sorrow. Advance courageously, and kill your way to the 9 heavens. Even if you die, your soul will be destroyed. The war soul will live on forever. The ancient war drums were beating and countless living beings were roaring. The heavens were stained with blood, and corpses fell like meteors. However, their unwilling and sorrowful cries resounded in the eternal universe. Did I cry? Suddenly, Yi Xian woke up with a start. A teardrop flowed out from the corner of his eye. He wiped it away in astonishment, and his entire person froze on the spot. Yi Xian had already forgotten how long it had been since he had shed tears. He had long forgotten the feeling of tears, but now he was actually crying? Why am I crying? Why am I sad? At this moment, Yi Xian was asking himself why he felt so sad and sorrowful. All of a sudden, Yi Xian felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness, causing him to scream out in pain. He staggered as he clutched his head and screamed in pain. What's wrong with you? Human Tao Master was shocked. I already told him not to be disturbed by the cries of the ancient battle soul, but he didn't believe me. At this moment, the battle soul's will is corroding his soul. He's going to be in big trouble. The heartless man said resentfully. The heartless man had hoped that Yi Xian would be of great use to her in the ancient Deadland, but she did not expect that before they even entered the ancient Deadland, Yi Xian would be in big trouble. What were ancient battle souls? They were living beings who had died in the ancient era. Although their souls were scattered, their indestructible wills existed on the ancient path, and even the chaotic universe could not erase them. Their wills existed forever, and they had no emotions. They were only left with the sorrow and pain of the past, which would affect anyone who came here. If one could not withstand the eternal sorrow of the ancient battle souls, one's soul would shatter. Even taboo figures would die without exception. Why does it feel so familiar? Who am I? Where am I? Ah! Yi Xian screamed in pain. The cries of the ancient battle souls grew louder and louder, and many images flashed past his mind. Yi Xian had never seen these images before. It was as if they were born in his mind out of thin air, but they were extremely familiar to him. Yi Xian, wake up! The human Tao master shouted coldly, hoping to wake Yi Xian up. It's useless. He's being invaded by the ancient battle soul's will. Unless he can withstand it, no one can save him. The heartless man frowned. Yi Xian was in trouble, and the other taboo figures looked at him coldly, especially the undying Heaven Lord. He looked at Yi Xian with a sinister and smug look. If Yi Xian died here, he would not have to kill Yi Xian with his own hands. Although Yi Xian was unwilling to die like this, the undying Heaven Lord knew why he was here. Killing Yi Xian was only one of his goals. His real goal was to enter the primordial battlefield and find the legendary Aeon Strange Flower. Only by obtaining the Aeon Strange Flower would he have the chance to become a living person again. According to Prison, if he could obtain the Aeon Strange Flower, he could become a person like Prison. The undying Heaven Lord was in awe of Prison's strength. Prison was an existence that he could only look up to. Even if he had turned into a taboo, he would still tremble in fear when facing Prison. It was as if Prison could consign him to eternal damnation with just a glance. Let's go. The primal chaos divine sovereign coldly glanced at Yi Xian, then took the lead to fly along the ancient path of the starry sky. The other taboos also went on their way. As for Yi Xian's life or death, it was naturally none of their business. Of course, many of these taboo figures had different thoughts about Yi Xian, and some even wanted to kill him. However, the ancient star road was unstable, and everyone had set the rule that no one was allowed to fight. Naturally, they could not break the rule. Chi, chi, chi. Many of the taboo figures shot out and disappeared from the spot. Only the human Tao master looked anxiously at the unconscious Yi Xian, not knowing how to save him. After waiting for so long, you finally returned. Ancient times were desolate and heavy like the heavens. Illusory figures floated through the void, causing Yi Xian to be shocked on the spot. This was Yi Xian's consciousness. He stared blankly at the numerous figures in front of him, and a sour feeling grew in his heart. Who are you? Yi Xian asked in a daze. Who we are is not important. What's important is that you know who you are. Echoes sounded in Yi Xian's ears. Illusory figures stared at Yi Xian. Although Yi Xian could not see their faces, he could feel their earnest gazes. It was as if they had crossed the ages to look at him. I am Yi Xian. Yi Xian answered this question because he was himself. He had never been anyone else. No, you are hope. The only hope to break free from the eternal universe. You have yet to awaken your memories. You still do not know your responsibilities. The ancient sorrowful voice continued to sound, causing Yi Xian to feel a splitting headache. Images that did not belong to him kept appearing in his mind. At this moment, Yi Xian had doubts. Doubts about himself. He saw a person who looked almost exactly like him. However, this person's aura was countless times stronger than his. Even though he had started the 12 heavenly gates, when he saw this person, he still felt small and insignificant. Chapter 1783. The scene was chaotic and memories surged. Yi Xian was resisting these memories that suddenly appeared, because he knew that they might be the memories of his previous life. At this moment, They were gradually being awakened by the mournful cries of the ancient war soul. You are not him yet. You will only know your responsibilities when you awaken your past memories. Go to the ancient forbidden land, and take back what belongs to you. You will understand your responsibilities one day. Rumble. In the next moment, these ancient battle souls shattered with a loud bang, before transforming into a mysterious symbol that shot towards Yi Xian. In the outside world, Yi Xian let out a low roar as he abruptly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. The feeling just now was like a dream, making him feel that it was extremely real. Are you okay? The master of human Dao heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Yi Xian had woken up. However, her expression changed in the next moment, because Yi Xian's forehead was glowing. Dong dong dong. A mysterious symbol jumped on Yi Xian's forehead, and released a desolate and heavy aura. Yi Xian also felt something, because this symbol was actually formed by the ancient fighting souls, and it had appeared on his forehead. What is this? Yi Xian asked himself in shock, but he did not get an answer. However, Yi Xian had a feeling that this mysterious symbol did not have any ill intentions towards him. Instead, it gave him a warm feeling. The most important thing was that when Yi Xian entered this ancient path, he could completely feel that this ancient path was extremely dangerous. However, when this symbol appeared, this feeling of danger actually disappeared. It was as if the symbol formed by the ancient fighting souls had become his protective amulet, allowing him to move freely on the ancient path of the stars. Let's go. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. A deep light flashed through his eyes. He called out to the Lord of Human Dao, and shot off along the ancient path. Yi Xian had a feeling, an extremely strong feeling. If he was not wrong, this symbol would be extremely useful, and could even be his trump card in the primordial battlefield. Bang bang bang. The ancient path collapsed and starlight exploded. There were even more terrifying black holes that appeared, as if they were going to annihilate everything within. Woo woo woo. The terrifying sound of the wind could be heard. Waves of black whirlwinds blew across the ancient path in the starry sky. The mournful cries of the ancient souls could be heard as well. Not only did it disturb people's minds, but it also made it difficult for them to move. The various taboo characters carefully ventured deeper into the ancient path of stars. Although they were known as taboo characters, they were treading on thin ice on this ancient path to the ancient forbidden ground. They moved very slowly. It was not that they did not want to reach the end quickly, but there were many restrictions on this ancient path of stars. These restrictions would produce terrifying things that could even cause taboo characters to suffer. Be it the chaotic black holes or the chaotic gales, they were nothing. After all, they were completely capable of resisting such dangers. What was truly terrifying was the restrictions on this ancient starry sky path. These restrictions were left behind by the experts of ancient times. If one was careless and fell into them, it would be extremely difficult to get out. Perhaps one would be forever lost in this ancient starry sky path. Rumble. Suddenly, just as the various taboo characters were treading on thin ice, a terrifying loud sound came from behind them. This caused them to turn their heads to look. Yi Xian. The undying Heaven Lord's face turned cold when he saw the person behind him. He did not expect Yi Xian to survive and catch up to him so quickly. Yi Daoyu is indeed powerful to be able to withstand the attack of the ancient war soul. The chess master smiled and praised. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not pay any attention to this scheming old fox. Instead, he looked at the various taboo characters indifferently. A strange look flashed across his eyes. Along the way, Yi Xian finally discovered the profundity of the mysterious symbol. This symbol could be considered a protective amulet. He did not need to tread carefully like the others, as all the restrictions were ineffective against him. When Yi Xian discovered this, he was excited and quickly came up with a vicious plan. Yi Xian, follow behind me. Don't fall behind. The heartless man transmitted his voice to Yi Xian. Everyone, I'll make a move first. I won't wait for you. Unfortunately, Yi Xian chose to ignore the heartless man. At this moment he had the mysterious symbol on him. This ancient path of stars was no longer a threat to him. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and quickly passed everyone with the human Tao Master. They disappeared in an instant. This caused the expressions of the various taboo characters to change drastically. They did not know why Yi Xian was so bold. Did he not know how dangerous this ancient path of stars was? For someone like Yi Xian, if he were to fall into a restriction, he would probably be lost on this ancient road forever. Let's see how he dies, the undying Heaven Lord said viciously. However, he did not know why, but his heart trembled violently. He felt an inexplicable sense of unease. This was because Yi Xian's gaze when he left was too vicious. The group continued forward. However, everyone had different thoughts. After all, these taboo characters were old foxes who had lived for countless years. Yi Xian's attitude had naturally aroused their vigilance. Let's do it here. On a narrow star path, Yi Xian looked around with a gloomy expression. He discovered that there were many restrictions on this narrow star path. This was the best place to make a move. Have you really thought it through? If we really do make a move, these taboo characters will definitely interfere. With just the two of us, not only will I not be able to kill the undying man, I'll even become a target for everyone, the human Tao Master said softly. Don't worry. The restrictions here are all left behind from ancient times. I'll only make a move against the undying man. These old fellows will definitely not implicate themselves for the sake of not dying. However, these taboo characters have set down a rule that they are not allowed to make a move before entering the ancient forbidden ground. If we break this rule, will they just sit by and watch? The human Tao Master said. Rules. Yi Xian smiled. His smile was extremely disdainful as he said, the so-called rules are meant to be broken. Moreover, these old fellows are all interested. As long as it doesn't affect their interests, they won't interfere in this kind of business. Yi Xian paused slightly at this point. His eyes were as deep as an ancient pond. Moreover, this is the best chance to kill the undying man. If he really enters the ancient forbidden ground and obtains a great fortune, that's not what I want to see. Yi Xian already knew that there was not only the 11th cauldron in the ancient forbidden ground. There were also many great fortunes and supreme treasures that the taboo characters wanted. If the undying man obtained a great fortune and his cultivation soared, he would be a great threat to Yi Xian. Therefore, Yi Xian had to strangle all threats in the cradle before entering the ancient forbidden grounds. This was also his usual way of doing things. Chapter 1784. The ancient starry sky path was rugged and winding. It was unknown how many forks there were on the ancient starry sky path. All the taboo characters were moving forward cautiously, afraid that they would walk into one of the forks and get lost on the ancient starry sky path. However, these taboo characters kept a distance from others as they moved forward. After all, they did not trust anyone else, and were also on guard against people who were secretly plotting against them. Where is this guy? The undying Heaven Lord moved forward cautiously, his scarlet eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. There was a faint trace of fear in his eyes. There was a saying that the person who understood you the most was your enemy. It just so happened that the undying Heaven Lord understood Yi Xian very well. The undying Heaven Lord did not need to think to know that Yi Xian was a vicious and ruthless person. He knew that Yi Xian wanted to kill him. At the same time, he wanted nothing more than to cut Yi Xian into 8 pieces and grind his bones to dust. However, along the way, he did not see Yi Xian's figure at all. Clearly, Yi Xian had been walking in front of them all this time. The undying Heaven Lord felt uneasy. According to his understanding of Yi Xian, this guy must be secretly plotting how to kill him. Although he felt uneasy, the undying Heaven Lord still had a certain degree of confidence because he had already become a taboo character. With Yi Xian's cultivation, it was impossible for him to kill him. Everyone, after walking through this narrow dragon coiling path, we will reach the end of the ancient starry sky path and enter the ancient forbidden land. However, I must remind you that this dragon coiling path has many restrictions, so you must be careful. Otherwise, if you fall into a restriction, you will have to pray for your own fortune. The primal chaos supremacy reminded them coldly before stepping into the narrow dragon coiling path. It was obvious that this was not the first time that the others had stepped onto the ancient starry sky path. They followed closely behind. The undying Heaven Lord frowned slightly as he looked at the last section of the dragon coiling path with a hint of worry in his eyes. He was very sure that Yi Xian would definitely make a move on him in this last section of the dragon coiling path. Moreover, he must have been waiting for him for a long time. The undying Heaven Lord knew Yi Xian all too well. This was the best opportunity that Yi Xian would definitely not let go of. Where is this guy hiding? The taboo characters had already entered the last section of the dragon coiling path. The undying Heaven Lord did not step onto this ancient path, but squinted his eyes as he observed this ancient startlingly. The uneasiness in his heart, because he could sense that Yi Xian would make his move here. Go! The undying Heaven Lord didn't hesitate for too long. Seeing that the taboo sovereigns were already deep in, he knew that if he delayed any longer, he would have to continue on his journey alone. Chi! The undying Heaven Lord took a step forward and entered the long coiling dragon path. Fortunately, there were many taboo overlords leading the way. With the undying Heaven Lord following behind, it saved them a lot of trouble. He's here. In the central section of the dragon coiling path, the symbol on Yi Xian's forehead glowed and pulsated slightly. He hid himself in the void as he secretly activated the Heaven Calamity transformation. Around him, bubbles were faintly discernible, exuding a desolate and heavy aura. These bubbles were not simple at all. They were all great seals left behind by ancient experts and contained great dangers within. Yi Xian was too sinister. He used the mysterious symbol formed by the ancient battle soul to gather all these great seals together in order to kill the undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian's mind was very calm. With his current cultivation and means, it would be very troublesome to kill the undying Heaven Lord. After all, the undying Heaven Lord was a great realm higher than him in terms of cultivation. Moreover, he couldn't use all his trump cards on the undying Heaven Lord. After all, he still had to face many taboo characters in the ancient Forbidden Land. Therefore, using these great seals left behind by ancient experts to kill the undying Heaven Lord was the best choice. In fact, Yi Xian wanted to use these great seals to kill other taboo characters. However, he only thought about it and didn't plan to do so. These taboo characters weren't here for the first time, and each of them had lived for countless years. They weren't comparable to the undying Heaven Lord. If he couldn't kill them, Yi Xian would bring great trouble to himself when he entered the ancient Forbidden Land. Closer, closer and closer. Yi Xian squinted his eyes and stared at the taboo characters walking towards him. The first person he saw was the chaotic hierarch. As Yi Xian activated the calamity transformation, he tried his best to conceal his aura. The mysterious symbol on his forehead violently pulsed, causing his entire body to fuse with the ancient starry sky path, making it impossible for others to sense his existence. However, Yi Xian was still cautious. After all, the Heaven Calamity transformation didn't have much effect on these old guys. The only thing that could hide his aura was the mysterious symbol formed by the ancient battle soul. This was the reason why he could hide here. Boom! There was a muffled sound. The first taboo to walk past Yi Xian was the chaotic hierarch. Yi Xian was only 3 feet away from him. Yi Xian tensed up, afraid that the chaotic hierarch would sense his presence. Fortunately, the chaotic hierarch walked past Yi Xian, as if he didn't notice Yi Xian's existence. However, at this moment, the chaotic hierarch frowned and stopped in his tracks. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. Could this old guy have sensed his presence? Just as Yi Xian was on high alert, the primal chaos divine sovereign only stopped for a breath of time. The corner of his eyes faintly discernible in Yi Xian's direction, before continuing to walk towards the end of the ancient road. He's really powerful. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. This taboo that had walked out of the river of chaos was really terrifying. He could vaguely sense that something was wrong. The second person to walk past Yi Xian was the ancient shadow. This old guy was really terrifying. When he walked past Yi Xian, the corners of his mouth curled into a strange smile. Then, he continued walking towards the end of the star-coiling path, as if nothing had happened. After that, the taboo figures walked past Yi Xian one by one. Some of them paused slightly, while others walked past Yi Xian directly. It was as if no one had noticed Yi Xian's existence. Finally, Yi Xian's eyes flashed. The undying Heaven Lord's figure appeared in front of him, and he was walking towards him. As if he was treading on thin ice, the undying Heaven Lord carefully observed his surroundings with every step he took. This was because he felt increasingly uneasy, and a great sense of danger appeared in his heart. No, there was danger. There was definitely danger. Boom! As the undying Heaven Lord got closer and closer to Yi Xian, his heart trembled violently. Even the forbidden death ray burst out and protected him, raising his cultivation to the extreme. Now is the time. Die. Boom. When the undying Heaven Lord finally got close, Yi Xian roared savagely. His eyes were filled with a terrifying baleful aura, as he sent a palm strike towards the undying Heaven Lord. I knew you wouldn't give up. The undying Heaven Lord was already prepared. He roared with hatred and sent a palm strike towards Yi Xian. The terrifying forbidden death ray whistled out. He had been preparing this attack for a long time, waiting for Yi Xian to appear. Chapter 1785. Bang! Both of them had the intention of killing the other. When their attacks collided, it immediately caused the entire ancient path of stars to tremble. Countless star dow's collapsed. Go to hell. The two of them collided and neither of them had the upper hand. However, Yi Xian seemed to have expected such an outcome. His following attack was extremely vicious and sinister. Boom! Yi Xian's two fingers were like two venomous dragons, as they went straight for the undying Heaven Lord's eyes. The heaven-punishing halberd was held in his other hand, as it turned into an ancient cold light that pierced towards the undying Heaven Lord's forehead. Yi Xian, you bastard, I'll take your life. The undying Heaven Lord was not afraid at all. The terrifying forbidden death ray was extremely terrifying. All sorts of forbidden techniques were unleashed in a frenzy, as they dealt with Yi Xian's killing moves with ease. Boom! 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 The two of them unleashed all sorts of sinister techniques. The terrifying shockwaves that erupted immediately caused the other Forbidden Realm experts to stop and watch. Yi Daoyu, stop immediately. You are breaking the rules set by us Forbidden Realm experts. The chess ancestor frowned. Unfortunately, Yi Xian could not be bothered with this old fox. He unleashed all sorts of vicious techniques as he charged towards the undying Heaven Lord. It was as though he wanted to kill the undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian, you dare to launch a sneak attack with such insignificant techniques? Today, I'll take your life. Rumble. The undying Heaven Lord roared with hatred as his forbidden death ray exploded in the starry sky. He unleashed all of his strength as he charged towards Yi Xian. Boom. Yi Xian's fists collided with the undying Heaven Lord's. However, Yi Xian was clearly at a disadvantage. There was still a certain gap between his cultivation and the undying Heaven Lord's. Yi Xian's figure was retreating. The undying Heaven Lord did not relent after gaining the upper hand. A death ray heavenly blade condensed and slashed towards Yi Xian. The terrifying death ray heavenly blade caused one's soul to tremble. Idiot! All of a sudden, Yi Xian let out a sinister laugh. He vanished into thin air, and a beautiful figure appeared behind the undying Heaven Lord. It was none other than the human Tao Sovereign, who had been waiting for a long time. Send you on your way. The human Tao Sovereign coldly spoke. She waved her jade-like hand, and unleashed a terrifying forbidden light. Instantly, the undying Heaven Lord was startled and dodged to the right. One must know that before the human Tao Lord turned into a taboo, she was already at the peak of the apex. When she turned into a taboo, she was even stronger than the undying Heaven Lord. This attack was enough to make the undying Heaven Lord feel greatly threatened. Undying Heaven Lord's dodge was fine, but his entire body deviated from the starry sky ancient path beneath his feet. A pile of bubbles strangely appeared, and rapidly pulled him into it. Undying old thief, goodbye. Boom. Yi Xian appeared once more. He stood shoulder to shoulder with the human Tao sovereign, a sinister smile on his face, as he watched the undying heaven lord being swallowed by the bubbles. Yi Xian, you despicable man! The undying heaven lord roared in anger. His entire body was trapped in the bubbles. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free. His gaze towards Yi Xian was filled with extreme hatred. He had been tricked. He had been tricked by Yi Xian once more. He had already turned into a taboo. He could have killed Yi Xian openly, yet he had fallen into Yi Xian's trap once more. He had even fallen into the great restrictions left behind by the ancient experts. You were stupid in the past. I didn't expect you to be so stupid even after death. Rest in peace. Seeing the undying heaven lord being swallowed by the bubbles, Yi Xian's lips curled into a sinister smile. He could finally kill the undying heaven lord for good. After all, these great restrictions were left behind by the ancient experts. If they still couldn't kill the undying heaven lord, then Yi Xian would really have a whole new level of respect for the undying heaven lord. Yi Xian, you despicable dog! The undying heaven lord cursed viciously, but his entire body was swallowed by the many great restrictions. Even if he didn't die, what awaited him would be eternally trapped in this ancient starry sky path. Of course, with the undying heaven lord's strength as a new taboo, he didn't have much hope of surviving among the great restrictions set up by the ancient experts. Buzz! The great restrictions disappeared with the undying heaven lord. Yi Xian had finally achieved his goal of resolving this problem. But the next moment Yi Xian frowned. This was because the many restrictions had already faintly surrounded him. There were even a few unfriendly gazes that landed on him. Yi Daoyu, you are too bold. Before entering the ancient forbidden lands, no one is allowed to fight. Don't you know this rule? The chess ancestor said indifferently, pointing his spear at Yi Xian. Although the other restrictions didn't say anything, their auras were abnormally cold. An extremely oppressive atmosphere was growing. Hidden killing intent flashed across their eyes as they looked at Yi Xian. Faced with the gazes of the many restrictions, Yi Xian smiled coldly. He suddenly stomped on the ground, causing the ancient starry sky path to tremble. Bubbles appeared on the ancient starry sky path, startling the taboo figures. You can control the restrictions left behind by the ancient experts? Aeon Shadow looked at Yi Xian in horror, a look of surprise flashing across his eyes. The other taboo figures also had solemn auras. Clearly, the means that Yi Xian had displayed had caused fear to rise in their hearts. After all, these old fellows had lived for countless years. The only thing that could truly pose a threat to them was the descent of the will of the chaotic universe, as well as the items left behind by the three most powerful eras. Now that Yi Xian was able to control the restrictions left behind by the ancient experts, they naturally felt threatened. As the saying goes, a single glimpse reveals the whole picture. If Yi Xian could control the restrictions left behind by the ancient experts, would he be able to move unimpeded in the ancient forbidden lands? When they thought of this question, every taboo figure's expression turned solemn. The apprehension in their hearts grew stronger. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, the chess ancestor's attitude changed. He laughed and said, Yi Daoyu is indeed capable. To think that you are proficient in the restrictions left behind by the ancient experts. I'll have to rely on Yi Daoyu for this trip to the ancient forbidden lands. The chess ancestor didn't mention a word about what had just happened. The speed at which his expression changed was extremely fast. He even seemed to want to curry favor with Yi Xian. Although fellow Taoist is not a taboo, his body is not inferior to ours. If fellow Taoist is willing, you and I can be friends. The death god nodded towards Yi Xian. It was obvious that he wanted to express his goodwill. Fellow Taoist, you are able to open the 12 heavenly gates as a living person. I, Black and White Sovereign, am extremely impressed. If fellow Taoist is willing, the two of us are willing to travel with fellow Taoist after entering the ancient forbidden lands. If anyone is blind enough to harm fellow Taoist, they will have to ask for our permission first. The black and white sovereign gave an eccentric smile, as though they were expressing their stance. They were clearly expressing their goodwill to Yi Xian. Following that, there were other taboo figures who expressed their goodwill to Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian kept sneering inwardly. These old fellows were all smiling tigers. They could fall out with him at any time. However, Yi Xian was also an old fox. Although he hadn't lived as long as these taboo figures, he was extremely shrewd. Using each other was to his liking. Yi Xian politely responded to them one by one. Only Eternal Shadow and the Primal Chaos God looked at him coldly. When the heartless person saw Yi Xian and the group of taboo figures, a look of worry flashed across her eyes. She had the intention of making use of Yi Xian to do things in the ancient forbidden lands. However, from the looks of it, she had been too naive. Not only did Yi Xian have a powerful cultivation, but he was also extremely shrewd and ruthless. Chapter 1786. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, none of the taboos mentioned Yi Xian's sneak attack. Instead, the atmosphere was peaceful. It did not matter to them whether the undying Heaven Lord was dead or alive. What mattered was that they would obtain what they wanted in the ancient Deadland. Rumble. The ancient starry path trembled as a vast desolate aura rose. A mottled door appeared at the end of the ancient path, and a shocking aura surged toward them. The door to the ancient Deadland has appeared. Aeon Shadow roared, his scarlet eyes flickering with excitement. Then, he quickly rushed toward the end of the ancient path. Boom! The taboos were all unusually excited as they followed closely behind him. Yi Xian's heart trembled slightly. He called out to the human Tao master and followed the taboos. At the end of the ancient path was a mottled door. It was an ancient bronze door covered in rust, making it look mottled and ancient. Only an intimidating aura was present, causing everyone's heart to tremble. This is the aura of the ancient era. This is the aura of the ancient era. The Yuan Qi we need is here. Aeon Shadow murmured excitedly. He looked at the ancient bronze door, his entire body trembling slightly. Each chaotic universe can only be entered once. I've come again. The primal chaos god's voice trembled. The ruins of the ancient era. Although the chess ancestor was extremely hypocritical, he could not control his emotions as he looked at the ancient door in front of him. He muttered to himself. The other taboos were also excited as they stared blankly at the ancient door in front of them. Their eyes were filled with great reverence, and there was also a trace of inexplicable passion. Even Yi Xian's heart was trembling at this moment, let alone these taboos. This was because he could feel the aura coming from the door, just by standing in front of it. It was boundless and ancient. The vast and mysterious aura rushed toward them. Just this aura alone made Yi Xian unable to suppress the reverence and excitement in his heart. Yes, it was reverence. Just from looking at this bronze door, Yi Xian felt a sense of awe rise in his heart. It was not because he was afraid, but because he was infected by the bleakness of the door. A heaven-defying and earth-shattering battle intent emerged, an undying will that existed forever. Just this door contained too many emotions and auras, making it impossible for Yi Xian to control himself. Yi Xian had an urge to push open this ancient door. It was as if as long as he did so, he would be able to see a whole new world, a world that truly belonged to him. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Xian continued to walk forward. His eyes were deep and perplexed. It was as if he had entered an indescribable realm, and was gradually arriving in front of the ancient bronze door. What are you trying to do? Yi Xian's footsteps immediately jolted the taboos out of their stupor. Aeon Shadow frowned and coldly rebuked Yi Xian. One had to know that this ancient door required everyone to work together to open it. If Yi Xian tried to open it without permission, he would suffer a backlash from the power of the ancient era. When that happened, they would definitely be implicated. What a pity. Yi Xian was so calm that he couldn't hear Aeon Shadow's words. He gently raised his hands and unconsciously pushed at the ancient bronze door. Do you have a death wish? The primal chaos god's expression changed, and he immediately retreated. He knew full well just how terrifying this ancient bronze door was. It was an artifact left behind from the ancient era. Anything related to the three strongest eras couldn't be taken lightly. Even an ordinary pebble on the side of the road could cause a taboos to fall. This idiot, Aeon Shadow cursed. He wanted to stop Yi Xian, but it was too late. All he could do was quickly retreat, afraid that he would be implicated in any danger. Rumble. In the next moment, Yi Xian's hands finally pressed onto the ancient bronze door. A dazzling azure light blossomed from the door, and an ancient desolate aura burst forth, shocking many of the taboos behind him to the point that they were forced to retreat. However, the danger that the taboos had anticipated didn't appear. Instead, faint chanting of scriptures came from the boundless starry sky, accompanied by the rumbling sound of the ancient door opening. Rumble! The ancient door gradually opened under Yi Xian's push, and an indescribable desolate aura surged out from the door. This aura was like a gust of wind, causing the taboos to stagger. They couldn't control their bodies at all. He pushed it open. How is this possible? How can this be? When Yi Xian pushed open the ancient door with his own strength, the taboos present were in an uproar. They couldn't believe their eyes. It should be known that this wasn't the first time they had come to the ancient forbidden land. Every time they came, many taboos would gather. Only when everyone worked together could they push open the door. This was also the reason why many taboos had decided not to fight each other on the ancient starry sky path. Once a fight broke out, there would be casualties. If they couldn't work together to push open the ancient door, it would be a loss for all taboos. However, these taboos didn't expect Yi Xian to push open the ancient door so easily. This was something they didn't dare to imagine. He must be the reincarnation of a taboos. The next moment, this thought appeared in the minds of all the taboos. They couldn't think of anyone who could open the ancient forbidden land so easily. At this moment, Yi Xian didn't care about what others thought. He pushed open the ancient door in a daze and unconsciously stretched his arms. He constantly breathed in the ancient aura that surged out from the door. His entire being seemed to be sublimated at this moment, entering an extremely mysterious state. Dong dong dong. Yi Xian slowly walked in, entering the ancient forbidden land in an extremely mysterious state. Many taboos looked at each other and hurriedly followed behind Yi Xian, entering the ancient forbidden land that they yearned for. Rumble! When all the taboos entered the ancient forbidden land, the ancient bronze door finally closed with a rumble. The outside world finally returned to peace. Yi Xian, I will tear you to pieces. No path in the starry sky, great taboo soul slaying. Terrifying divine light crisscrossed, twisting the starry sky to shred the body. Ancient runes were born, turning into terrifying soul-slaying light that strangled the undying Heaven Lord. The undying Heaven Lord dodged in a sorry state. Extremely venomous curses came from his mouth. Ever since he fell into the great taboo laid down by these ancient experts, he had fallen into a great calamity with no chance of survival. The great taboo left behind by these ancient experts was too terrifying. Every strand of power produced was enough to kill him. Blood flowed and his spirit withered. Even though the undying Heaven Lord tried his best to resist and dodge, these great taboo were too terrifying. Chapter 1787. This was because these great restrictions contained the indestructible will of the ancient experts. Even if their bodies and souls were destroyed in the distant past, the great restrictions they left behind were enough to cause the later generations to fall into a calamity of death. The eternal universe, the three great eras. These three great eras were known as the strongest. The later generations could only deduce how great the three great eras were, but they could not truly understand how terrifying the experts of the three great eras were. It was like a frog forever residing in a pond. The frog could only see the scenery of the pond. It would not know how vast the world outside of the pond was. Pooh! An ancient divine light pierced through the chest of the undying Heaven Lord. Blood flowed out of the large hole, causing him to suffer an unimaginable calamity. A miserable howl came from his mouth. So what if it was a taboo? So what if it was a dead person? In the great restrictions left behind by the ancient experts, the so-called taboo of the later generations could not even withstand a single blow. Even the restrictions left behind were enough to kill them. The methods left behind by the three great eras were unimaginable. The later generations could only deduce. When had they ever truly experienced the methods of the three great eras? Yi Xian, the undying Heaven Lord, was fleeing in a sorry state. However, his body was badly damaged. The death chi around him was extremely faint. He could only roar in anger. However, his eyes were filled with extreme despair. "You are really a piece of trash." Suddenly a deep voice came. A pair of deep and mysterious eyes appeared in the great restriction. This pair of eyes was emotionless. It was as if looking at it would cause one's body and soul to be destroyed. Prison. When this pair of deep eyes appeared, the undying Heaven Lord seemed to have seen his savior. A sorrowful cry came from his mouth, because he knew that only the owner of this pair of eyes could save his life. Buzz. The starry sky froze. The great restriction disappeared. A figure seemed to walk out from the void, and quietly appeared in front of the undying Heaven Lord. His illusory form was boundless and unfathomable, making it even harder for people to see his face clearly. However, the appearance of this figure caused the restrictions left behind by the ancient experts to vanish into thin air. It was as if wherever he appeared, he was the only one that existed for eternity. Huff, huff, huff. The undying Heaven Lord was panting heavily, but in fact he wasn't breathing. He was merely a dead man. He had only managed to survive with his last breath, and this was a kind of emotion that appeared under the great pressure and stimulation he was feeling. You haven't even entered the ancient forbidden ground, yet you were already so easily tricked by him, and almost lost your life. What use do I have for trash like you? Prison spoke in a low voice that didn't contain the slightest emotion. It was as if he was reprimanding a dog he'd raised, and he faintly revealed a displeased expression. Perhaps, maybe the undying Heaven Lord wasn't even comparable to a dog in his eyes. A mere chess piece. If this chess piece was useless, he would have mercilessly abandoned it. Plop. Before Prison, the undying Heaven Lord had no dignity at all. He knelt before Prison and repeatedly kowtowed. "I will definitely not disappoint you. I will definitely kill him." Boom. Suddenly, Prison sent the undying Heaven Lord flying with a single glance. Several hundred bloody holes appeared all over his body, and he let out a miserable howl. "When did I say that I wanted you to kill him? You only need to remember one thing. He isn't someone you can kill. I want you to stop him from getting that thing. And this is your mission. If you can't complete the mission I've given you, you can truly disappear." Prison's voice was very soft, and it didn't contain any power. However, it made the wailing undying Heaven Lord roll and crawl to his feet. He endured the intense pain all over his body and kowtowed, truly as lowly as a dog. "Yes, I will definitely complete the mission." The undying Heaven Lord trembled as he kowtowed. "Remember, as long as you complete this mission, you will be able to continue living. As for killing him, it's impossible for you to succeed, because he isn't someone you can get involved with." Buzz. As soon as Prison finished speaking, the two of them directly appeared in front of the ancient door. Prison didn't seem to do anything, but his deep eyes flickered slightly, and the ancient door actually opened again. "Remember what I've said to you." Boom. The undying Heaven Lord lost control of his body, and his entire body fell into the ancient door. Prison's unfathomable methods were simply terrifying to the extreme. It was simply impossible to predict. "Huang, I won't let you wake up." Prison spoke faintly. He looked at the ancient forbidden land behind the door, and finally, a trace of human emotion flashed past his eyes. This emotion was complex and difficult to understand. In the end, a light sigh came from his mouth, and it quietly disappeared. Ancient desolation. Vital energy filled the sky. Waves of extremely terrifying vital energy swept through the entire world. The vast and boundless earth was so vast that one couldn't see the end of it with a single glance. The divine tree Tong Tian, the clouds blotted out the sun. Ancient divine mountains rose and fell one after another, like dragons coiling in the vast and desolate ancient earth. Desolate, ancient, heavy. There were too many auras contained in this ancient forbidden land. The ancient vital energy left in this world was as thick as oil. Just breathing in here was equivalent to 100 years of bitter cultivation. Is this the ancient forbidden land? At this moment. As soon as Yi Xian walked out of the ancient door, he appeared in the void. The rich vital energy in the world caused his body to stir. As he breathed in through his mouth and nose, the heaven-burying art in his body circulated crazily, greedily and excitedly devouring the vital energy in the world. In just an instant, Yi Xian felt that his cultivation that hadn't moved for a long time was actually rising slightly. This feeling caused his mind to tremble to an unimaginable degree. Ancient forbidden land. This is the last pure land left behind from the ancient era? Yi Xian roared towards the sky. He was so excited that he couldn't control himself. This was because he could completely feel that this pure land left behind from the ancient era was the place that was truly suitable for him. He had opened the 12 heavenly gates for a very long time, but in the outside world, his cultivation didn't show any signs of rising at all. Even if he devoured destiny, his cultivation only increased slightly. In the beginning, Yi Xian only thought that if he wanted to merge the 12 heavenly gates into one, he would need an unimaginable amount of cultivation resources. But when he entered the ancient forbidden land, he finally understood one thing. It wasn't that he needed an unimaginable amount of cultivation resources, but that he needed the vital energy in the ancient forbidden land. Vital energy and spiritual energy were two completely different concepts. These two substances were worlds apart, just like steel and iron. At this moment, Yi Xian greedily breathed in the vital energy that permeated the ancient forbidden land. His body and mind were surpassing, as if he had returned to his homeland. This feeling couldn't be described with words. Qi, qi, qi. Just as Yi Xian was intoxicated by the vital energy of heaven and earth, all the taboos appeared behind Yi Xian. Everyone was looking at the ancient forbidden land with fervent eyes. They greedily devoured the ancient forbidden land, causing the death aura in their bodies to become stronger. Chapter 1788. Yi Xian instantly woke up from his intoxicated state. After all, he still had many taboos around him. Moreover, this was an ancient forbidden land. The degree of danger was unknown. He still had to be careful. What a great ancient forbidden land. Heaven and earth yuan qi, the laws fill the sky. Good, good, good. Many taboos exclaimed excitedly. They had a boundless yearning for this ancient ruins. Their hearts were filled with great reverence. Boom! Suddenly, just as everyone was sighing with emotion, a loud sound came from behind them, and a figure entered. The sudden abnormality caused the taboos and Yi Xian to look at the newcomer. However, when Yi Xian saw who it was, his face turned frighteningly malicious. Undying Heaven Lord? Yi Xian could not believe his eyes. He had just killed the Undying Heaven Lord. How could he have escaped from the restrictions left behind by the ancient experts? Not to mention Yi Xian, the other taboos were also bewildered. They knew better than anyone how terrifying those great taboos were. It was impossible for the Undying Heaven Lord to survive. There was something strange about the Undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian stared maliciously. A terrifying thought flashed through his mind. Yi Xian was absolutely certain that it was impossible for the Undying Heaven Lord to escape. For him to be able to escape the great restriction left behind by the ancient experts, someone must be helping him. Moreover, if Yi Xian remembered correctly, the ancient bronze door had already closed when they entered the ancient forbidden land. Even if the Undying Heaven Lord had escaped from the restriction, how could he open the ancient door again? In the next moment, Yi Xian got a definite answer. Someone was helping the Undying Heaven Lord. This person was extremely terrifying. Otherwise, he would not have saved the Undying Heaven Lord and allowed him to enter the ancient forbidden land. Yi Xian. The Undying Heaven Lord's face was cold. He roared angrily. However, if one looked closely, they would notice that he was looking at Yi Xian with great fear. The source of this fear wasn't Yi Xian's sinister methods, but the warning prison gave him. causing him to feel even more helpless against Yi Xian. He wanted to kill Yi Xian, but he wasn't stupid. From the words he could tell that Yi Xian's identity was not simple. It was not something he could involve himself with, let alone kill Yi Xian with his own hands. You do have some skills. As expected of the Undying Heaven Lord. You really can't die, Yi Xian said indifferently. Yi Xian, cut the crap. Let's wait and see. The Undying Heaven Lord replied coldly. Then, she turned into a ray of death light and shot away. She didn't stop at all. Interesting. Yi Xian looked at the Undying Heaven Lord with deep eyes. The Undying Heaven Lord actually didn't attack him. This was extremely abnormal. One had to know that the Undying Heaven Lord couldn't wait to turn him into ashes. Just now, he was framed by Yi Xian. The most important thing to do now was to take revenge. But instead he left. What was his goal? At this moment, Yi Xian's mind was spinning rapidly. He already felt that something was wrong. The Undying Heaven Lord must have a goal that he didn't know about. This goal was definitely not to kill him for revenge. As for what the goal was, Yi Xian couldn't guess. But it definitely had something to do with this ancient forbidden land. Everyone, the ancient forbidden land is the wreckage left behind after the ancient era was destroyed. It retains the heaven and earth yuan qi that only existed in the ancient era. There are also countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures. This is also our opportunity. Eternal Shadow was the first to speak. As a very ancient creature, he was quite familiar with the ancient forbidden land. The opportunity that everyone wants is here. As for whether you can obtain it or not, it will depend on your own abilities. I'll go first. Boom. Eternal Shadow took a step forward and instantly fled into the distance. Clearly, there were unimaginable benefits in this ancient forbidden land. Everyone wanted to be one step ahead. Farewell, everyone. Swish. Swish. Where is the 11th small cauldron that you mentioned? It's in the ancient divine mountain. Swish. 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 Ancient divine mountain? Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. He didn't know much about the ancient forbidden land. This was the first time he had heard of this so-called ancient divine mountain. Listen to me slowly. Swish. Swish. The ancient divine mountain was the most important place in the ancient forbidden land. Legend had it that it was also the only divine mountain left from the ancient era. The entire primordial divine mountain was divided into 81 palaces. Each palace contained the legacy of a primordial orthodoxy, as well as unimaginable opportunities within. The 11th small cauldron was in the ancient divine mountain. Perhaps it would appear in one of the palaces. 9 was the extreme, and 9 by 9 was the extreme of extremes. Every 9 palaces was a threshold. If someone could enter the 81st palace, they could control the entire ancient divine mountain and become the ruler of this forbidden land. Of course, this was only a legend. Whether it was true or not was unknown. However, there was one thing that was very likely true. If someone could pass through all the palaces, they would definitely obtain an incredible opportunity. Perhaps they would be able to inherit the strongest inheritance of the ancient era, and even obtain heaven-defying opportunities left behind. Where is the ancient divine mountain? Yi Xian's heart thumped as he looked at Swish. The divine mountain is not visible, and there is no fixed way to enter. Perhaps a lake, an old tree, or even just a pebble can be the gateway to the ancient divine mountain, said the heartless man. When Yi Xian heard this, he was immediately enlightened. No wonder these taboos left so quickly. It seemed like they were searching for the door to enter the ancient divine mountain. Yi Xian, we'll take our leave here. If you can really enter the ancient divine mountain, you and I can join forces to fight against the intruders. You can take the 11th cauldron, and I can help you obtain it. But as a price, you'll need to help me obtain what I want. The heartless man said solemnly. This is a deal between you and me. Naturally, there's no problem. Yi Xian smiled. All right. I'll wait for you at the primordial divine mountain. Qi. The heartless man took a deep look at Yi Xian, then turned into a beam of death light and disappeared. Human Dao, let's split up. You have to be careful. After all, this is our first time here. so we're not as familiar as these old fellows. As the heartless man left, Yi Xian warned the human Tao master. After all, if the two of them were to travel together, they would lose an opportunity to find the entrance to the ancient divine mountain. Splitting up was the best choice. All right. The human Tao master nodded in agreement with Yi Xian's decision. Then, the two of them gave each other some instructions before going their separate ways. The yuan qi of the world was vast and turbulent. Yi Xian transformed into a ray of light as he traveled through the vast and boundless land of ancient ruins. Ancient trees that reached the heavens flashed past him one after another, and the whistling of the wind was terrifying. Chapter 1789. While Yi Xian was searching for the entrance to the primordial divine mountain, he was also searching for his own opportunity. One had to know that the primordial divine mountain was filled with yuan qi of heaven and earth. It was bound to give birth to incredible divine items. If he could rely on divine items to increase his cultivation, he might be able to combine the 12 gates of heaven into one before even entering the primordial divine mountain. As the saying went, a little more cultivation was a little more guarantee. Since Yi Xian had entered the primordial divine mountain, he naturally wouldn't let go of any opportunity to increase his cultivation. This was because Yi Xian knew himself very well. Although he had a lot of trump cards, in terms of actual cultivation, he was still far inferior to the taboo figures. In this primordial divine mountain, Yi Xian had to compete with them in a battle of wits and strength. He also had to deal with unexpected situations in the primordial divine mountain. It was extremely difficult for Yi Xian to increase his cultivation in the primordial divine mountain, outside the primordial divine mountain. But it was different in the primordial divine mountain. This was his best opportunity, and he definitely wouldn't let it go. To put it bluntly, Yi Xian was willing to use unscrupulous, sinister, and even despicable means. As long as he could increase his cultivation, he wouldn't let go of any opportunity. Trust, cooperate, that didn't exist. Apart from human Tao master Yi Xian, who he could trust a little, Yi Xian would definitely kill the other taboo figures if he had the chance. As for the so-called cooperation with the heartless man, it was just a pretense. When the time came, they would turn hostile. Everything was for the sake of benefits. However, there was one thing that Yi Xian was very curious about, and that was the Undying Heaven Lord. Among those who had entered the primordial divine mountain, only he and human Tao Undying had entered for the first time. They didn't know much about the primordial divine mountain. However, the Undying Heaven Lord seemed to be very familiar with the primordial divine mountain. He was also the first to search for the entrance to the primordial divine mountain. This meant that there was someone behind him directing him. Who was directing the Undying Heaven Lord? Yi Xian's eyes darkened as a terrifying thought flashed through his mind. He understood the Undying Heaven Lord very well. This person was extremely arrogant, and his methods could be said to be vicious. He would never submit to anyone. But for this mysterious person to be able to make him submit, his identity and cultivation must be terrifying to the extreme. Even the undead would revere him to the extreme. Could it be them? Suddenly, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. His face was filled with seriousness. If there was really someone who could control them and not die, then perhaps it was only that small group of people. They were also the survivors of the 3 great eras. When Yi Xian thought of this, his heart sank to the extreme. Even he had to look up to this small group of people, because he simply couldn't touch that kind of terrifying level. Shocking the heavens and impasse, the king of all eternity. No one knew what level of cultivation the people who had survived the 3 strongest eras had reached. As for how powerful they were, it was only a taboo speculation of the later generations. No one had truly seen them, and the only things left for the later generations were some legends about them. Huff! Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He suppressed this terrifying thought. It was useless even if he let his imagination run wild. The most important thing now was to strengthen himself. This was the right thing to do. Yi Xian traversed through the ancient mountains, Just the yuan qi that he was constantly devouring allowed his cultivation to increase slightly. However, Yi Xian was not satisfied. He felt the yuan qi fluctuations and constantly stepped on some spirit fruits that were nurtured by the yuan qi. There were even some heavenly treasures that he couldn't name. Eat. Yi Xian was not a glutton, but these yuan qi spirit fruits and heavenly treasures all contained an extremely large amount of energy. Yi Xian was not only searching for the entrance to the ancient sacred mountain, he was also constantly devouring these treasures to increase his cultivation rapidly. It had to be said that Yi Xian had been walking for 300 years. He had searched for countless yuan qi spirit fruits and heavenly treasures, constantly increasing his cultivation. Huff! On the peak of a nameless ancient mountain, Yi Xian swallowed the last spirit fruit. His body slightly swelled, and his cultivation faintly increased by a trace. Not enough, not enough. Yi Xian frowned. He had searched for 300 years of spirit fruits, and his cultivation increased day by day. However, he was still far from the peak of the 12 heavenly gates. Recently, he had eaten these yuan qi spirit fruits and heavenly treasures, but they did not have much effect on his cultivation. It was obvious that these spiritual items were gradually losing their effect on him. Moreover, searching for these heavenly treasures was only secondary. The real problem that troubled Yi Xian was that he still had not found the entrance to the ancient sacred mountain. Rumble. Suddenly, just as Yi Xian was deep in thought, an extremely terrifying fluctuation came from hundreds of millions of miles away. There was even a shocking death ray that rushed into the sky. This immediately attracted Yi Xian's attention. A great opportunity has appeared. Yi Xian suddenly stood up. The energy contained in this fluctuation was extremely powerful. Even from hundreds of millions of miles away, Yi Xian could feel it deeply. Moreover, in addition to this extremely powerful energy, he also felt the power of a taboo. This meant that a taboo character was seizing this great opportunity. Let's go. Yi Xian stepped into the sky and headed straight for the terrifying fluctuation. Whether or not a taboo character was present, he would not let go of this opportunity. To Yi Xian, it was unrealistic to rely on himself to search for opportunities. Only by robbing others of their opportunities could he quickly strengthen himself. So what if they were taboo characters? Although Yi Xian's cultivation was not as powerful as a taboo character, he had many trump cards in his hands. These were enough to make these taboo characters suffer. In an extremely desolate valley, there was only an extremely clear pool of water. In the center of the pool, there was a strange flower blooming. This flower was emitting a milky white halo, and this extremely huge amount of energy was blooming from this flower. Damn it! Two figures with chaotic death rays were struggling violently in the pool. The terrifying taboo death ray whizzed out, resisting the energy released by this strange flower. These two were the black and white sovereigns. They had discovered this pool by chance, and could sense that there was something strange about it. Indeed, after their exploration, this strange flower had bloomed in the pool. This made the two of them want to pluck this strange flower. However, the black and white sovereigns had been too careless. Although the mystical flower contained a terrifying amount of energy, the pond's seal had been triggered. At this moment, just resisting the seal within the mystical flower was extremely taxing, much less plucking it. At this moment, the black and white sovereigns were in a deadlock with the pool's seal, let alone plucking this strange flower. The two of them were extremely anxious. If others had seen the energy fluctuations released by this strange flower, they would definitely rush here. At that time, if others saw their situation, they would definitely be in danger. The two of them could only blame themselves for not being careful enough. If they had been more careful, they would not have fallen into the pool's seal. Chapter 1790. As the saying goes, what one fears will come true. Just as the black and white sovereigns were fighting against the restrictions in the pool, Yi Xian had already quietly arrived. His gaze was burning as he stared at the strange flowers blooming in the pool, practically ignoring the existence of the black and white sovereigns. What a strange ancient flower! With just one look, Yi Xian's eyes burned with passion. He could completely feel the energy contained within this strange ancient flower. It was an extremely nourishing item for him. So it's Yi Daoyu. Please lend us a hand. When the black and white sovereigns saw who it was, they looked at each other and saw the relief in each other's eyes. If it was any other taboo character, especially an old monster like the ancient shadow, the two of them would definitely find it difficult to deal with them. However, Yi Xian's arrival allowed the two of them to heave a sigh of relief. After all, Yi Xian's cultivation was not as high as theirs. Although they were resisting the restrictions in the pool, Yi Xian was still not a threat to them. So it's the two of you. Finally, Yi Xian focused his attention on the two of them. His eyes were deep and unfathomable, but a cold glint flashed across his eyes. If Yi Xian remembered correctly, the black and white sovereigns cultivated the great Tao of chaos, yin and yang. The two of them lived and died together. Their combined cultivation was extremely terrifying, and even other characters would be extremely wary of them. Yi Xian did not want to encounter these two old monsters. After all, they were taboo characters. Furthermore, they advanced and retreated together. They were extremely difficult to deal with. However, he had to deal with them even if they were difficult to deal with. He would not give up on this strange ancient flower, nor would he give it to the black and white sovereigns. The two of you are in such a good mood that you are actually having fun bathing in the pool. An outsider like me has disturbed your good mood, Yi Xian said with a fake smile. He tentatively walked towards the pool. As long as the black and white sovereigns emerged from the water, he would definitely turn around and leave. This was because he did not have the ability to fight the two of them alone. The black and white sovereigns were extremely shrewd. They immediately knew that Yi Xian did not have good intentions, and was also eyeing this strange ancient flower. This caused their expressions to change. Yi Daoyu, you have just entered the ancient forbidden ground. There are many things that you do not understand. This strange ancient flower was discovered by the two of us. If you are willing to lend us a hand, the three of us can share this strange ancient flower. The black sovereign said sinisterly. A threat. A veiled threat. The black sovereign king is telling Yi Xian that the two of us aren't to be trifled with. You Yi Xian, better not have any ideas about us. Yi Xian didn't even need to think to know that the two of them were trapped here, as he looked at the black and white sovereigns, who were motionless in the pool and surrounded by a deathly light. This you would also like to share this strange ancient flower with the two of you. Unfortunately, this Ye's cultivation cannot compare to the two of you. Why don't the two of you let me have this strange ancient flower? Yi Xian had a fake smile on his face. He had already arrived beside the pool. His eyes were burning as he stared at the strange ancient flower. He already had the intention to snatch it. Yi Xian, I advise you not to make a mistake. The white sovereign was a woman. However, her skin was frighteningly pale. Her pair of sinister eyes stared at Yi Xian, giving him a warning. Are the two of you threatening me? Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. He was still smiling as he spoke to the two of them. Now his face was filled with sinister killing intent. Since he already knew that the two of them were trapped in the pool, Yi Xian naturally did not need to feign civility with the two of them. Furthermore, if he could take advantage of this opportunity to kill the two of them, he would have one less competitor. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and directly entered the pool. However, this made the black and white sovereigns happy. They looked at Yi Xian with a gloating expression. Idiot! There is an ancient restriction in this pool. The gloating expression on the white sovereign's face had yet to disappear. Before she could finish her sentence, her words came to an abrupt halt. Her expression was so gloomy that it was frightening. Dong dong dong. It was as if he was walking on flat ground. He walked on the surface of the water like a gentle breeze, without causing any ripples. Yi Xian strolled on the surface of the water, and walked step by step towards the strange ancient flower. His forehead was glowing, and the mysterious symbol formed by the ancient battle soul was pulsating. He actually ignored the ancient restriction in the pool. How did he do it? The black sovereign roared in shock. He could not believe his eyes. He could not believe that such a thing could happen. Yi Xian gave a disdainful smile. He dared to enter the pool because he had the confidence. After all, The mysterious symbol formed by the ancient battle soul was a protective talisman. Yi Xian guessed that he could naturally resist the restriction in the pool. In the end, his guess was correct. Otherwise, how could he enter the pool so easily? Stop him! The White Sovereign instantly woke up and roared furiously. The two of them looked at each other and saw the cold killing intent in each other's eyes. Rumble! The Black and White Sovereigns were indeed frightening. Even though they were resisting the restriction in the pool, they still diverted some of their energy to attack Yi Xian. Boom! 2 rays of death light shot towards the back of Yi Xian's head. This attack was terrifying to the extreme, and it even contained the true meaning of the grand Tao of Yin and Yang. It was accompanied by the forbidden death energy, and it could annihilate everything. Heaven Calamity Transformation. Boom! Yi Xian had long been on guard against the two of them. How could he not be prepared? He instantly used the Heaven Calamity Transformation to dodge the attack of the two forbidden characters. However, this caused him to break out in cold sweat. Even though the Black and White Sovereigns were trapped in the pool, their combined killing technique was extremely frightening. Fortunately, he had many tricks up his sleeves. If it was anyone else, they would have suffered a great calamity. However, after the Black and White Sovereigns unleashed this attack, they no longer had the energy to attack Yi Xian. This was because the restriction in the pool was once again sweeping towards the two of them, forcing them to resist with all their might. Yi Xian will accept your gifts. Yi Xian gave a cold smile. Without any hesitation, his 5 fingers reached out towards the ancient mystical flower and pulled it into his hand. Wang! The ancient mystical flower was uprooted and fell into Yi Xian's hand. However, before Yi Xian could observe the mystical flower in detail, something shocking happened. Hua hua hua! The entire pool surged with monstrous waves. At the roots of the ancient mystical flower, a gigantic whirlpool appeared. Ancient divine light swirled within the whirlpool like a door that made one's heart palpitate. A door to enter the ancient divine mountain? Although the Black and White Sovereigns were resisting the restriction in the pool, they were also constantly watching Yi Xian's actions. When the entrance to the ancient divine mountain appeared, it caused the Black and White Sovereigns to roar in anger. They never expected that the roots of the ancient mystical flower would be an entrance to the ancient divine mountain. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Yi Xian let out a complacent laugh. As the saying goes, one who tries to plant flowers will not succeed, but one who does not try to plant willows will succeed. Although he was searching for spiritual objects born from heaven-earth Yuan Qi, he had also been searching for the entrance to the ancient divine mountain. He never expected to find it here. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.